Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook and this is the Silver Spook live stream. And today we will be talking about, among other things, Taika Waititi. I'm gonna try. This is gonna get very serious, so content warning. This is gonna get pretty serious. We can probably guess from the title, but Taika is, of course, the director and Hollywood superhero for all of us indigenous Pacific peoples. He is of Maori descent. You probably know a bit about him if you follow my channel, but you might have heard of Thor, Thor Ragnarok, Thor Love and Thunder. You might have heard of What We Do in the Shadows. Our Flag Means Death. It was greenlit for season 2. Yay. The biggest show of this year, Our Flag Means Death. Executive produced, of course, by Taika. And What We Do in the Shadows, etc. You probably know. This screenshot, if you don't know, the lesser known film of his called Boy, which I highly recommend that you check out if you have not seen it yet. It is it's one of my favorite of all of his movies. It's the most let's just say it's like the most directly biopic, or it's not quite an autobiography, but it's like very much a show that is about Taika's childhood and his experiences, and it really tells you a lot about, it's about an 11-year-old child and devout Michael Jackson fan on the east coast of New Zealand in 1984, who gets a chance to know his absentee criminal father, who has returned to find a bag of money he buried years ago. So yeah, so I've talked about this briefly before on other streams, but this one's gonna be even more specifically about Taika, among other things. But yeah, it's been a interesting journey from Boy to, of course, Thor Ragnarok, right? Which you probably know. I'm gonna take a wild guess. You don't know what Thor is. You probably live on another planet. I was gonna say under a rock, but I'm pretty sure Wi-Fi can reach under rocks, especially if you have 5G. So, but Thor, Love and Thunder is coming soon. He's also in a Buzz Lightyear with Chris Evans. That was Captain America. What is that movie called? Is this called Lightyear? I think it's called just Lightyear. Yeah, is it just Lightyear? Yeah. So Taika is in this movie. He's in everything, right? So he's working on 25 different projects all at the same time. Our Flag Means Death, the queer, indigenous, executive produced pirate show. I'm always talking. When am I not talking about this show? Amazing show, obviously. Thank goodness it's been green lit. Reservation Dogs. Reservation Dogs is like indigenous Turtle Island people's actual experiences. I've talked about this show so much over the last year, and he's also executive producer on this one. So there was recently, though, but to kind of get more into the actual theme, though, this is just a bunch of works that you should check out if you have not seen them yet. But I'm guessing people who watch this channel probably have. But let's talk about the Maori superhero and the family-lessness of colonialism that severs the umbilical of the indigenous and the colonizer to parents, everyone's parents, and healed civilization. So, you can tell. I mean, of course, parent-child separation. Content warning. I mean, that's why this is such a humorous screenshot, right? And actually, the movie Boy is a lot like that. There's this article that I'm going to go into now, which is called the multivarious multiplexity of Taika Waititi. So there you see him sitting there with it's a very everything he does is some kind of comedic. It's like he's always constantly trying to be the court jester for everyone. Like he's actually said multiple times in this interview, all I want is to make everyone happy. I just want to make everyone laugh, I just want to like lighten the mood. I just want to make everyone feel good, which is like, that's just indigenous ways. I mean, that's like the indigenous storyteller. That's like my dad, actually. My dad, and like in a lot of ways, like me. Sometimes I make people sad, I know, uh, and sometimes upset, but for good reasons. But the comedy aspect is the way that he does comedy is very much. Some people have commented it's a very Jewish, because he's also of Jewish heritage as well. His mom is Russian Jewish, and then his but also it's also an indigenous way. He was raised in the Maori territory in New Zealand, and so that's like it's like interspersed everywhere in his work. But anyways, the multiverse multiplexity of Taika Waititi. This is from a Wired article. He makes big movies and little movies, funny movies and sad movies, but mostly big, little, funny, sad movies. Waititi is a bunch of contradictions. Like this article, importantly, is written from a fair-skinned person from San Francisco who writes for New York Times perspective, who is, of course, a movie critic. And I'm not saying it's a bad article, but it's another lens. It's a lens in, and I think that like a lot of people interpret what Taika is doing as like multi-personality disorder, almost multifarious, like day and night, kind of contradictory. They can't really understand it, big, little, funny, sad movies. The title doesn't really say exactly, doesn't really say anything. It says everything and nothing at the same time, right? A bundle of contradictions, right? And like there is, I mean, from the just looking outside in, like from the west in, that's certainly what it looks like. About 7 minutes into my second conversation with the actor, writer, and director Taika Waititi, he confessed somewhat abruptly that he doesn't like being around people. There was absolutely nothing loaded about the remark, he assured me, but he also seemed to mean it. It's just really draining, he said, with whoever. It doesn't matter who, even my family, but definitely people that I've never met before. It was a hard claim to believe. Outwardly, Taika Waititi can seem extroverted in the extreme. He's goofy and antic with an easygoing familiarity and a seemingly bottomless amount of energy. While filming, he's known for keeping his sets lively, playing music, launching into bits of oddball comedy, sometimes doing directorial costume changes where he vanishes and reappears in different outfits. Kate Blanchett described Thor Ragnarok as a long Mardi Gras parade. So, anyways, so like, and a lot of this is, whether it's like Reservation Dogs, Our Flag Means Death, like we just talked about. It's also directed and acted in parts of The Mandalorian, Jojo Rabbit. He about a lonely boy in Nazi Germany who has a imaginary friend that's Adolf Hitler, played by Taika Waititi. So he has a lot of, he's doing a lot of things, and he's chameleonic, shifting in tone and sensibility constantly. Someone who seeks out company and attention but quickly tires of both. He's easily amused and yet it seems just as easily bored. But anyways, so like it kind of goes into more and more about like his personality and how he directs and what he's doing. But I'm not going to read the entire article on this video because it's not the point of this. But I think that like importantly I wanted to get at least a little gist of that, because later on the article goes into I lost my little thread here. Later on it goes into kind of like his history and where a lot of that personality comes from. And let me see if I can find that. There it is. Okay. So, and I mean, just to kind of get straight to it, because why mince words, right? We have a limited time, and I tend to go on 5-hour, tangents. So this is a bit from that article, further in. So Taika's father, named Taika, but everyone called him Tiger, belonged to a small Ewe or tribe in Waihao Bay, a remote area on New Zealand's rocky east coast. In his 20s, Taika's father left and founded a motorcycle gang, Satan's Slaves, and spent time in and out of prison. He also farmed, wrote poetry, and painted, primarily landscapes and portraits, but also idealized images of Native Americans. The two met when Taika's mom and Taika's dad met. Taika's mom is a Jewish woman, and met Taika's father on a charity visit to the prison, bringing books for the inmates. And Waititi was described. Also, his mom was a communist, by the way. And like Waititi has described the relationship as the most improbable match you could imagine. Even now, he said, I can't envision what their conversations would have been like. So remember that Taika's parents met in prison. Taika's mom, a communist Russian Jewish woman, met Taika's dad, a prison inmate, trying to cheer up prisoners. The couple separated when Waititi was 5, and his mother stayed in Wellington while his father moved back to Waihao Bay, a 2-day drive away. For years, Waititi went back and forth between the two places, developing a knack for moving between different groups. For a time, both families are poor. In Waihao Bay, adults collected shellfish for food, drank at the town bar, and sometimes got into fights. I learned at a very early age that you can't trust adults, Waititi said. You can't really rely on any of them. So, I mean, and throughout the the article, it kind of has like that comes up again and again, and that's a lot of Boy. I've talked about it, but Boy, if you don't know, he spends most of his time daydreaming about what his dad is, right? Oh, my dad is awesome. My dad is like a scuba diver. He found pirate treasure. My dad is cool, man. My dad, the indigenous boy. And he said, like I said, like him and all of his cousins, like in the article I pointed out, like him and all his cousins all had dads in prison or gone or dead. And Taika, him and his friends, but we're just like, oh, my dad's a superhero, man. My dad is like Superman. He can fly in the sky. My dad runs a cool motorcycle gang. My dad is awesome, man. My dad could beat up anyone. Once my dad went to war in Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The kids, the parents' generation are all named Alamein. The dad's name is Alamein based on where the dad was stationed in the U.S.-led war. Another dad is named Libya. Another dad is named Iraq. Based on where their dads were stationed, right? Or where the grandpa was stationed. The dad's dad was stationed in one of the West's wars. And so they're like, my dad killed 30 commies in the war. My dad was awesome. My dad like has a samurai sword, and he's like the samurai we watched on the TV. And it's very funny and humorous, right? It's and you have all these little in the movie you have all these little snapshots of. In Boy, you see Boy, Michael Jackson, like that's a shot of Taika like lying down like some kind of sexy 80s album cover. Michael Jackson. There's a Michael Jackson haka is this one, right? It's Taika is the main character. Taika as a little boy dreaming of his dad being Michael Jackson. He has a mansion. He has awesome things. He's in a big city with lots of money. He's going to see Michael Jackson concerts all the time. He is Michael Jackson. And in this article, why am I talking about this? So in this article, where is it? Yeah, this is what it was. Yeah. So in this article, Waititi eventually channeled all these experiences into one of his most iconic films, Boy, which tells the story of an 11-year-old boy and his younger brother Rocky, who lives in with various cousins under the loose care of their grandmother while their father is in jail. Although the film isn't strictly autobiographical, it's shot in Waihao Bay in the same house. So it's not autobiographical, but the house that it's in, it is literally the same house that Taika lived in. It is a falling apart. It's like basically trash. It's just poverty. It's falling apart house. It reminds me of all the houses that the kids in the areas that I live in and worked in as a social worker and STEM teacher for the underserved, at risk. They call it at risk. At risk of what? At risk of. It's not at risk. It's colonized children. That's what it is. It's ghettoized, impoverished children under colonialism, capitalism, disproportionately non-white. That's what it is. But the big word is at risk, because it's kind of like we, the United States state of Hawaii, and our teachers and our United States social work system are going to save children from the peril that something has put them. They've put themselves there. But that's what Taika was. Taika was an at-risk child, at risk of becoming a horrible gangster like his father, a horrible criminal like his no good punk, nasty drug dealing criminal brown parents. His dad specifically. So we have to save the social work system that's going to come in. The police, we have to keep them in line. Well, the police have to lock your dad up, and the CPS and the so-called child welfare system of this colonizer state has to save you. That was my job, right? Save you from the risk of you and your black on black and your brown on brown crimes, because that's like in your nature. So we have to save you. But anyway, you know what the reality is, though, right? You should. You follow me this long. This is the major point of Neofeud as well. We're gonna get into that. So, but this is where he grew up. He grew up in that house. I can never find a picture of the actual house. It's like let's see. This is the kid trying to, Taika Waititi had always dreamed of having superpowers. This is the little boy. When he's born, his mom dies, and then they say, "Oh, you killed your mom." And so the boy, this little boy, or he internalizes that he has. It's not really explained. It's just, you killed your mom, and he kind of internalizes that. Oh, I have superpowers. I can kill people with my superpowers. I can make you do things. I can make you fly. I can make you fall over. Right. So it's like this simultaneous tragic. It's not really tragic comedy, but this tragedy that's kind of leavened by this cheesy comedy. It's kind of like, why did his mom die? Why is everybody where I'm from, Hawaiian, Filipino, Samoan, Maori, Filipino, mostly Asian and Pacific Islanders, right? Indigenous people. In Kalipalama, where I worked, where Neofeud's actually about, as a native Hawaiian, working in poverty alleviation in the ghetto of illegally occupied by the United States Hawaii, where our language was banned and our culture was eradicated. Why is where we had universal health care, the first in the world, 1859, Queen's medical system, that was destroyed by the United States, illegal occupation of Hawaii. Why is everybody dying at 39? That's the average life expectancy for the ghettoized people of color where I'm from. Right? Why did Albert? Why did Kale? Why did Siala? Why does all the Micronesian and Samoan mommies all die at 40, and the dads go to prison before that, and then they have to cry, and they don't even know why mom died. Nobody explains shit, right? And then you make up stories about how, well, maybe I had superpowers, maybe I'm like Magneto. I made that metal, truck, hit my mom, or maybe I made. They said something about the mom's heart explode. I don't know what a heart attack is, because they don't have any education in the ghetto where I'm from for the colonized people. So maybe I have the 5-finger heart strike like I saw in the martial arts movies with David Carradine. Maybe I have the superpower. You're just making up these stories to yourself, right? Drawing pictures of the alien. Maybe you're just imagining all of this reality because you're being raised by television, because you have no mom and dad. Because dad's in prison, like Taika Waititi's dad, and mom is dead. Meth overdose, denied health care, maltreated in the colonizer's hospital system, like indigenous women die all the time, black women die all the time on operating tables. Why is mom dead? I don't know. I'm gonna make up stories. So it's very funny because it's all these funny, and he's like making people fall over, and there's like a scene where, maybe I'm like the Hulk. I just got so big I exploded my mom. I just go, I hulked out of my mom, and that's why mom died. So it's kind of funny. But then it's also because you have to laugh, otherwise you couldn't survive being indigenous under colonization. Like I've brought that up several times. So that's like it levens everything so you can get. That's why Neofeud has so much. That's why I was talking about this yesterday. It was you cannot get it now. Fortunately, that's why you got to sign up for these things before they happen when they have these kind of events. But I was in the children's literature Hawaii event yesterday where we were talking about. Actually, there are multiple stories. Asian and then Pacific Islander. Mana Comics was there. They make really cool indigenous superheroes. Speaking of superheroes, but we're talking about like how everyone had that same concept that like there's a lot of tragedy. No, I was the most no bullshit about it. I'm just like colonization happened, but everybody's like there's a lot of sadness and there's picture brides. We're talking about this. One person was the author of a book about the Asian experience, having to leave and trying to make a life in Hawaii, in sovereign Hawaii, and having a difficulties trying to just find food and journey across the ocean in a new place, trying to live, and then under U.S. racist colonization and capitalism, having to under anti-Asian hatred, and that's a traumatic. All of that's traumatic experiences. So it's full of comedy, and so we're talking about that, and that was very powerful. But it's like if you were to just say this is a story about how my mom died because the hospitals killed her and my culture is eradicated and I was raised by a television and video games because my dad was in prison for being brown and he was led astray by the previous generation who all died and fought in wars that he didn't even understand and named all his children. It's just too depressing. Nobody can consume that as a book, movie, or video game. And so that's why it has to be full. It has to be full of comedy. That's why Neofeud is all fucking jokes all day long. And that's why this movie is very is very comedic because it is very difficult to put it down. But it is about a true reality, That's the important point. Like this is a scene where this is like my fond memories of my dad where he cut my hair all funny, and then we picked up we're just like we're just like walking down the beach picking up random trash, right, driftwood and kelp, and then making up stories about who we are. That's like the few times he gets to spend with his dad when his dad's out of prison for like a couple weeks. Which was to be clear, that was Taika Waititi's experience. Taika Waititi is a lost child whose family was shredded to pieces as an indigenous child by colonization. Taika is protege from Neofeud. I mean, if I go into that, I've talked about Neofeud all the time. But that's Neofeud's central thesis is about the severance and destruction of family, both of the colonizer and the colonized, in different ways. And that's his experience. That is his experience. And that's like, so when I think about it, why Holly's like, I feel like you guys are like the same person. Like Holly will say, Silver Spook, I feel like you and Taika Waititi are the same person. You're like indigenous nerds and you're constantly referencing movies and games and literature and all these other things and like making jokes and the humor style is like the same and all these other things. And like we are the same because we have very similar experiences. That's what make us, is all those experiences. And we're not obviously identical, but we're Pacific Islanders. No, I don't know. The thing is, I don't have all the exact same experiences of in the way of the family being shredded into pieces, and then you being cut off from the umbilical, the pico. That's the that which connects you to your ancestors, like the umbilical connects you to your mother or your parent in the womb, feeding you. Colonization is about severing and chopping everyone's pico out and ripping out, right? That's why they take children and move them thousands of miles away. I was just reading Braiding Sweetgrass, the chapter about the grammar of animacy and how do you have a living language when you have no one to speak it to, except the author talks about all I can speak the language to is the post-it notes and my dog. I can say sit and teapot and kettle and hello, how are you? And it's just like I sound like, I feel like I'm Tonto, from the Lone Ranger. I say like 2-sentence words. It's not the language. It's the language I feel like is not really alive. It's just I say a couple words here and there, and then I wait 2 weeks and then I talk to a handful of people and try to piece back together bits of it, And but why is that even? Why were there 9 people left who spoke Potawatomi on the earth? There were less than 50 children speaking Hawaiian in 1986. Now there's like 20,000. But why were there only 9, and why were there less than 50 of a country with 1 million people? Why were there less than 50 speakers, right? Why were there only like a tiny fraction? Why were there no Hawaiian navigators? There's a lot of stuff that's come out recently about issues related to, or like lack of credit being given and lack of kuleana given to Maupialag and everyone in the Satawal. But why were there no navigators, right? And what left to do the Moana navigation, right? That was the severing of the piko. That was the chopping off and ripping apart of the family, and the culture, and the children being ripped out of the culture and dropped in. And CPS, the social work system. Neofeud, the main character, is a social worker who personally severs a piko. He rips the children out of the arms of parents. That is the most intense scene. Is a scene where you take little baby Taika, or baby Hawaiian child, or baby indigenous child, and you, with the police behind the government agent protecting children, you have to come up and rip the child out of the arms, and the mom is screaming like, no, you can't take no, you have to take the child. Because why? Because that's what you benefit from. That's the part that breaks people when they play Neofeud, if they actually are paying attention, which it should. Because people go, now everything, now Black Lives Matter, now the indigenous struggles, now all of why everything is burning to shit. Because when you sever someone's culture, when you sever another person's child from them and from their family, you rip your own self in half as well. Because now what are you, right? And when you let that fester and you let that wound rot and grow pustules and build in your heart, and just like ignore it, right? And just go, well, we're going to be patriot socialists and get some healthcare and housing for Americans, and we're just going to ignore everything else. You know that your entire existence is built upon shredding those families in half and making Taika and making all the children that I work with, for the thousands of them. That's what your entire existence is built on. You know that we're the OG socialists and communists, and we're the people that can bring the healing back. And every time you say, shut up, we just got to get $35 an hour wages and get rid of two billionaires, and then we'll be good. Right? And that's why Neofeud says, no, this is who you are actually, though. This is who we are. This is who we all are. Even the indigenous people, the colonization breaks you, and then you come back and then you re-break your own people. That's all the people that are selling out, right? Taking $500,000 a year from the Hawaiians, taking $500,000 a year from the state of Hawaii to gentrify and make more homeless Hawaiians in the military, the police, corporations, even working for nonprofits, working for social work, working for whatever, working for the universities to educate Hawaiians, not educating them properly, lying to them, denying their colonization. Let's just ignore all of that, what we've done, and we'll just we'll shore up the U.S. empire. We'll put a LGBTQ plus flag on the Lockheed Martin. We'll have a gay queer, we have a queer person on a Burger King meal. And then you get further. When you believe that, the longer you let yourself distance yourself from your actual healed ancestors and your connection, both non-human and human, the harder and harder it gets. The more and more your mother dies, your actual mother. That's the Aina. That's the land. And then the less and less. And then you go from 9 elders that speak a language that millions once spoke to 8, and then 7, and then 6, and 5. It's okay. Let's just try a little bit more of West undoing its own imperialism. 3, 2, 1. And then there's no one left that speaks the language. No one has the grammar of animacy anymore. And then, well, that's just then you have the actual apocalypse. But anyways, so let's talk. But so the back to the thread. When Waititi, so he said when he spent hours watching American television shows and movies, including 80s classics like The Young and the Restless, because that's, I know that's super intense. So we're gonna be funny again. My streams are like this, right? I try to make them like this anyway. Sometimes I just go fucking full DEFCON 15 Silver Spook, but it is getting late in the day. Waititi spent hours watching American television shows and movies, including 80s classics like The Young and the Restless. I spent all my time playing Contra. That's why I made Decolonizers as a Contra clone with Vietnamese communists, indigenous Hawaiians beating up, in a comedic, satirical way, John McCain and Tina Thatcher, the Mad Max Thunderdome. I mean, literally, Taika is playing Mad Max on a pirate ship, in Our Flag Means Death, and we have a Mad Max Tina Turner in Decolonizers in a Contra-style shoot-'em-up video game where you kick capitalist colonizer asses, right? So do you know why the colonizers don't get, right, when in Decolonizers is a game I'm going to be doing a lot more talking about, because I got to go do conferences where I Imagine Native is one I'm going to be presenting Decolonizers. But why is Decolonizers full of jokes about you have to bomb human rights, freedom, and capitalism and you people? Why does he look kind of like Colonel Kilgore from Apocalypse Now? Because I watched Apocalypse Now. That was one of the movies that raised me. And to be clear, like my luxury was having like more parents than the average family. But my parents themselves were the ones that were severed off of their own culture, and then but they still were. I had it much better. I had it so much better than so many people around me. So, but still, like, I interacted a lot more with video games and movies than any Hawaiian culture. So that's why it's that. I didn't learn any Hawaiian language ever growing up. My mom did it. My mom was scared to speak it. So that's why it's all Contra shoot 'em ups, right? And you're playing communist Vietnamese, right? Because I played a lot of Contra. I played a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog. I played a lot of Super Mario. I played a lot of that because that's who raised me. And that's what I have experience with, that's what I had access to when I wasn't being bullied to shit for being a brown Hawaiian guy in, obviously Hawaiian guy amongst a lot of fairer white and Asian, wannabe white people trying to become billionaires. It was games like Contra that was there. I would come home and I'd play Contra all night. Super Mario, Genesis, and I'll go back and be depressed and terrified and treated like shit in school. And I come home and play more video games. So, that was my experience. But I forgot, how did I get on this? Yeah, so he's talking about like watching his and he would imagine his dad, boy fantasizes his absent father, whom he imagines as a deep sea diver. Oh yeah, actually I want to talk about this. This is actually kind of funny though. Although the film, Waititi eventually channeled his experiences into boy. The younger brother Rocky lives with his various cousins under the loose care of the grandmother while the father's in jail. Although the film isn't strictly autobiographical, it was shot. Okay, I already said that. Many details, like a rusted Toyota that can be started with a teaspoon. Hey, I started my Toyota by connecting the electrical wire to the battery. Like my Toyota has like, Holly knows we had a broken ass car. I had a car that like you couldn't park it uphill. You couldn't park it downhill because there's no reverse. You had to always park it uphill. The Sorry to Bother You car, from Boots Riley, black internally colonized communist. Taika Waititi's mom is a Jewish communist, and Taika Waititi's and Luna is just a Vietnamese communist. So there's a close tie between communism and indigeneity because we invented it. But Boots Riley's show, he has the drawstring broken Toyota with the drawstring windshield wiper, like orange hood, black orange roof, black hood, gray door because you got all mismatched parts because it's a broken old shit car. You don't have no money, right? He pays 40 on 2, and he pays 40 cents because that's all the money that he has because he's a black internally colonized person. And so like that kind of stuff is like that stuff is that's also the humor of Sorry to Bother You, right? If you haven't seen that one, also I highly recommend that one. It's full of Sorry to Bother You. It's a science fiction, and it also has Tessa Thompson, who's also in a lot of the Taika movies like the Thor movies, right? Playing the Valkyrie. Let me get back to the story before I go off too far from this. But so there's all these little jokes and humor. Boy fantasies about his absentee father, whom he imagines, as I said, as a deep sea diver, a master carver, a rugby star, but who's ultimately revealed to be self-deluding and petulant. So his dad is kind of an asshole. His dad is protege. His dad is like a 25 going on 13 immature dude who he's kind of already been long failed, by a dad who like got shell shocked killing communists in Vietnam or shooting some Asians up in Korea or whatever dad did, right? And then dad drank himself away or just died for whatever reason, and the mom wasn't around. And so, Taika's character that he plays is the kind of lost latchkey, but being indigenous is a whole nother level of that. Not really lost, being the lost, parentless child, misguided, getting into gangs, right? That was my job, right? That was the point of the social services and the thing that Carl Carbon is trying to do, when he isn't stealing children. The thing that I never had the CPS direct job. I had the job of trying to help kids get like on paths, like as a STEM teacher teaching robotics and Lego engineering using ultrasonic sensors, and trying to help kids make video games that are homeless, sleeping on the street, like literally sleeping in front of my class with like one slipper, like no more two slipper. Got one slipper, 1 foot all full of Band-Aids, and the other one is maybe that's what we're smelling like tuna fish because they just have to fish rotten cans of tuna out of the trash to eat, and then they come into my classroom eating all my animal crackers and my fruit snacks, right? And so like, like, hey, I don't care. I'm gonna eat all the fruit snacks you want, man. Just don't bring any knives and guns into my classroom when we're gonna learn about Lego robotics and STEM and making video games, right? So so that was his all those kids that I work with, I might still have failed, all of the found families and found gangs, and the gang is what happens, right? When you are ghettoized and impoverished and severed off from your culture and in an uncaring capitalist colonialist city or countryside like Honolulu, New York, Los Angeles, Auckland, Wellington, Waihau, and you're severed off from everything, and you have to reconstruct a family, and you're misguided, and the culture doesn't like you, and it calls you a criminal, so you say, fuck you, America, fuck you, white colonizer New Zealand, I'm going to go be a criminal then, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to be like Kanye, or I'm going to be like that other star, I'm going to be Michael Jackson, I'm going to be that Godfather, I'm going to be that image of what it means to be a man or a cool person or have a good life that I can latch onto, since you have severed my umbilical connecting me to my actual culture. I'm going to find something else to be, right? And then, so, and that's really what, so the 80s gangs, a lot of senses, is all the people that have been severed off and then dropped into poverty trying to make do, right? With the familylessness, finding a new family and the familylessness. And it's people say a lot of families and people, part of my point of this entire essay, this kind of video essay, is that, and in this thread, right? Actually, this is a good jumping off point to talk about how both the colonizer and the colonized have no families. Colonizers have no so as I've already pointed out at length, the indigenous people who actually have healed ways that are described as communistic, socialistic by the United States Department of Indian Affairs, etc., which are ways to live in respect and peace and long-term survivability in ecologically sound ways with nature, with person to person, person to nature, and nation to nation, right? And so a broken way, like the unhealed descendants of Roman trauma, like Britain, France, Spain, etc., the United States, of course, the descendant of Britain and the Anglo-Saxon Empire, right? They have to break. The indigeneity also has to be shattered and fractured and severed, because if the indigeneity persists, communism might persist and capitalism might fall. That's explicitly stated by both the British, the Americans, the French. They've all recognized this. We have to take the children and the parents, kill the Indians, save the man. What they really mean is destroy communism. The genocide of indigenous people on Turtle Island was a war. It was a genocidal extermination to prevent the spread of communism, like the Vietnam War, which is about the Americans going to the indigenous Vietnamese people and preventing the spread of communism there. But really, all genocide of indigenous peoples is a war by capitalist colonialism, which come and go together against collectivist healed ways. It's really not really a war. It's really repeated self-harm and collective repeated self-trauma. That's why I call it, and the indigenous people in Neofeud too, the super advanced multi-billion-year-old alien indigenous people of Alpha Centauri, call the Earth and the utopian fusion of U.S., NATO, EU, New Zealand, Japan, and anyone else who wants to join that colonial capitalist project. They call them the unhealed descendants of the Aquilan trauma. The Aquila, because Aquila is the eagle worn by both the American and the Roman empires, right? It's not really a war. It is really its own kind. As a collective race, it is a petulant refusal to heal. It's like the U.S. continuing to throw out propaganda and not cooperate and say, you should cooperate while we take your stuff. Be nice to us while we put out anti-China and attack Asians and kill them in our streets. You be nice and it's in that itself is self-harm. You could be cooperating, but you don't want to. Because as a collection, the Euro settler and Euro colonialists inside Europe, like Sweden, where they don't feed children, and it's the rape capital of the world. I just discovered Sweden is the highest per capita rape, apparently. Makes sense when you starve your neighbor's children. And also fund and arm and make the most weapons per capita. Sweden is the military-industrial complex capital. Did you know that? Most per capita weapons built and then sent to kill innocent people in wars to prevent the spread of communism, like Afghanistan, Vietnam, etc. Sweden builds a lot more. I mean, the U.S. actually makes in total more weapons, but Sweden sells a lot of them to the U.S. So per capita, they make the most weapons and they do the most raping. So the Nordic model is the rape, kill, war, imperialism model. That's what the Swedish model is. That's the Nordic model. Anyways, bye. Good. Thank God their PRs. Sweden has the only country that has better PR than Canada to airbrush their colonial capitalist atrocities. Colonizers have no families because everyone is an abused trophy. The indigenous have no families because their collectivist lifeways are destroyed. Police tear the dads away. CPS tears all the children away. And that's why I said this Taika Waititi interview is so close to home. And that's another scene from Boy. This is all the kids in Kalihi, the Filipino, Samoan, Tahitian, Tongan, all the kids. Poor black kids, one poor white kid usually. The dad's from Detroit. The dad was from Detroit, made it big, rebuilding houses in the Hurricane Katrina, a fiasco, and then lost all the money, and now is a poor white guy somewhere in downtown Honolulu. And that's like, we would have one white kid. Sometimes it'd be a rich white kid from Kahala, but they wouldn't be hanging out here. They go back to Kahala. They go back to the fancy mansion-filled neighborhood. But all the poor kids, they got no parents. They just running. That's my dad was like this. My dad likes going to the Marshall Islands. He goes there every year. He used to go there every year. Not now, but back when we were in high school. We did mission trips. I did a mission trip to try to help. It's a missionary trip. That's me stormtroopering over there to go, hey everybody, let me save you with Catholicism and the good news of Jesus Christ. Stop speaking your language and put some clothes on and let's use you to fucking set off 56 nuclear weapons. Which is what they did to the people of Micronesia, by the way. Bikini Atoll, specifically. Watch the Radio Bikini documentary. But anyways, so my dad likes going to the Marshall Islands because they have huge poverty. They have huge amounts of little children running around with no parents. Just like when he was little. And my dad doesn't even realize that the reason why he looks back, he remembers that time, is because, he doesn't even realize it, is because the United States has no vested interest in telling Hawaiians like my dad and my mom, did you know you were colonized by us? We eradicated your language and culture, severed all your parents from their children, cut your Asian, Pacific, and other indigenous heritages off from you. And we're sorry about that. We're going to make reparations. The United States has no desire, because again, it doesn't heal. It's not going to go, it will never admit to a wrong. The Democrats pretend to admit to a wrong, and then they do nothing. The Republicans, the only difference between Democrats and Republicans just say, I don't know. Donald Trump, it was famous because he would have indigenous people stand up and go, hey, what about us? And Donald Trump's like, I don't want to hear about that shit. That's just crybaby stuff, right? That's just SJW, this and that, right? Whenever somebody says you're just woke SJW, something, this and that, that's them refusing to hear, and then he'll try to not just heal, not just like say sorry. That's the Democrats go sorry like a Canadian or a Swedish person, sorry, and then do nothing. That's no good. You have to make concrete equity and reparations to materially and economically and actually in your own mind. Not just I'm sorry, but like I'm gonna make you act. You're gonna be equal to me in every way, right? So the Democrats don't do that. They pretend to say sorry. They put it. That's why the Democrats put an LGBTQ plus sticker on the side of the Tomahawk missile and drop it. The Republicans just say fuck LGBTQ plus people and drop the Tomahawk missile. That's the only difference. The Democrats put an indigenous face on the side of their Boeing aircraft flying over Taiwan Strait to start nuclear war, and then drop missiles all over random ships, and then blame it on the North Korean and Chinese plane. Right? And then drop an F-35 off the side of an aircraft carrier and crash it into the ocean and blame it on the Chinese. The Chinese use psionic waveform emitters to brainwash my American pilot. They became communists, and that's why not because we make garbage F-35s, because we're spending trillions of dollars on luxury yacht payments and not paying anyone to make any actual aeronautical engineering devices. So all of that's no good. That's no good. So that doesn't help anyone. And I'm way off topic. That's Taika Waititi said under a chair. So my point though is that like even if you have the luxury of having a house and food because you work for the U.S. military, well, number one, that could be running short. 1 out of 4 families is food insecure and starving, literally. The wives and husbands and children of soldiers in the U.S. Marines, naval sailors in the U.S. Navy are starving. So I don't know how good that deal is anymore. But you're slightly better off than if you're just an average American citizen, homeless on the street, trying to figure out how to piece together the $500 for your insulin, right? You're slightly better off because the pay is better. You get cost of living allowances when you're in the U.S. military. And the U.S. police get paid, obviously, a lot more than the average citizen. Like people that paid to stand outside around the school being shot up, and hold moms outside of the school, and with all their body armor, anti-tank missiles, and multiple machine guns, and just stand outside for over an hour while all the children die in the classroom. Right? That's what they paid the big bucks to the American police for. So the. So let me go through this before I keep going off on another tangent. But colonizers have no families because everyone is an abused trophy. The indigenous have no families because the collectivist lifeways are destroyed. Police tear the dads away. So Taika Waititi's dad specifically was torn away and put in prison. Taika Waititi's granddad was torn away after poverty and sent off to go kill innocent people in American wars. My uncle went off and killed innocent people in American wars too, and then he came back all fucked up too. He was already fucked up before that, but he got more fucked up after he went off into the Korean War and killed innocent people in Korea and participated in systematic rape to build primitive accumulation to have a capitalist puppet state of the United States called South Korea. That actually did all the genocide with hundreds of thousands of people on a routine basis, and then America blames it on North Korea to prevent the spread of communism. To prevent, when people say prevent the spread of communism, I would argue to prevent the spread of indigeneity, to prevent the undoing of the brokenness of the West. That's what, when you prevent the spread of communism, it's a refusal to get better. When you start a war, when you sanction these countries, when you try to break up the Belt and Road and stop the Silk Road win-win cooperative planetary framework from reemerging, it's a desire to resist taking your medicine so you can die a short little life, right? With a few more mansions and a couple limousines and a G5 or a G6 or your private jet, right? It's going, well, why don't we just leave everything broken a little longer so like 10 people can have a good time in a nuclear-proof bunker in New Zealand when we start nuclear war in the Taiwan Strait and Ukraine at the same time, right? Every day I'm seeing like all these articles about how today the big article, of course, right? It's on the screen. Russia will strike the West if the U.S. rockets hit. Why is that something that seemed to be an important thing to say? Everybody knows that if the rockets fly, the rockets are going to fly everywhere. The United States is preparing everyone for what it wants. The U.S. ruling class is preparing you and NATO and Europe, Swedish ruling class, which are, again, Sweden is the rape, weapons, imperialism capital of the West, apparently, and not that all the other countries are any better. The Swedish ruling class, the Nordic ruling class, the German ruling class, which also are going along with a lot of the sanctions, and they're getting all their gas and their energy cut off, so they're going to be. I don't know how you're going to program your AI for your Volkswagens in the dark, but whatever job you had, but everyone is going along with this because they don't want to allow they like the same reason why patriot socialists in the United States that are fake leftists that are actually fascists in crypto, whether they realize it or not, encrypted into some kind of bullshit, paperwork ideology called, or paper thin ideology called, we're gonna have patriotism in our socialism in a country that literally is dedicated to genocide, slavery, capitalism, and death worldwide, and so all of these places are dedicated to not putting back together what the traumas that they individually and collectively and historically have done. Anyway, so that's why the reason why they put those articles out is because they're readying you for when the neocons and your rulers shoot the nukes. So you better get on it, American. Also, don't come to Hawaii. You shouldn't be taking a vacation in Hawaii. You have no time off. There is no time off for any American. I went on a whole thing about coming to Hawaii, so I'm not going to do it again. But there is no time off. We have too high COVID numbers. There's not going to be any water. We're already running out of water. If there's 1 million tourists here, which there's 1 million in a month, there's already 1 million a month. It's 1 million people taking the water that we are running out of, and then we're going to have uninhabitable islands. So there's no water, military. It's illegal occupation, all of tourism. There's almost all the money when you fly into Hawaii goes straight to the billionaire and millionaire corporate white people, not Hawaiians. You're giving like negative money to us. So people say, so you're not helping. So don't come in. But also, you have no time for a vacation. You have to get to work in your U.S., Canada, your EU, wherever you are. You don't have any time to take off. There's no vacation time. You should take a land vacation. You should take a decolonization. You should support the people that are the most impoverished and the most struggling and the most oppressed in your area, and support them undoing the thing that's going to get us all killed. You have no time for a vacation. You don't deserve a vacation. So, you don't deserve you can take some time off, but you don't deserve a vacation in Hawaii. When the children of Niger who don't have electricity, let alone ability to get on a plane, let alone the money, when everyone in Niger, Afghanistan, and Iraq that you benefit from the wars of, when everyone in all the global south has taken a vacation across the world 3,000 plus miles, like coming to Hawaii, when every single impoverished child has a vacation, then you can take one. Until then, land vacation. You can take a break. I mean, obviously you gotta take a break. You go go camping. You go see some nice areas. See your own nice areas, and then help the people that are struggling to save. It's the indigenous people in the area you're in that are struggling to save the area you're in. Support the indigenous people in the area that you're in to save the area that you're in, so you have a planet to vacation on. Maybe you ever think about that? No, it's all just I want to fly to Hawaii. Don't fucking fly to Hawaii. There's gonna be no more Hawaiis next year if Hawaii dies this year. So that's critical. But anyway, this is not a stream about that. So the parentless. So let me go back to this. Colonizers have no families because everyone is an abused trophy. The indigenous have no families because the collectivist lifeways are destroyed. Police tear dads away. CPS tears all the children away. So that's Taika Waititi's experience. The parentless native children raised by TV and video games, like myself, Taika, Megan, everybody that I talk to on all my panels, we're all raised by TV and video games. That's why everything is full of TV and video game references and movie references and nerd shit, because that's what happens when you have no parents. Or, that's what happens when you have no parents connected to your actual authentic culture. And my dad is a wannabe fucking American. He tells me to my face there's no such thing as genocide in America or Canada. He's terrified of being Hawaiian. I realize now, but I was just talking to Holly, I'm only realizing now what's actually happening in my dad's head. He is terrified of being identified as an Asian. His older sister literally calls the Japanese people, she is half Japanese, like by blood quantum, but her ancestry, her mom's from Japan, right? She says those Orientals are very stingy. She says shit like that. I'm like, how can you say that? That's like you're talking about your mom. But her mom said, don't be Asian, be American. Fold into with Danny Noy, the greatest American imperialist white supremacy and capitalism supporting senator from Hawaii, Daniel Inouye, 442nd U.S. World War II. He was the ultimate Democrat, right? He's about bringing the empire and all of the people of color into its ranks, right? You can be American too, just like sever off all of your heritage, Asian, Pacific Islander, Hawaiian, throw it in the gutter, join the military, fight Korea, Vietnamese communists, and become a great American like me, one-armed Daniel Inouye, fighting evils in World War II, right? And my dad's mom said, you cannot be Asian. The Asians are Orientals. They're despots. They're communist hive mind bugs. We are great Americans. We just stay out of the sun. My aunt always carries an umbrella with her to get as white as possible. They changed their accent. My dad became the hippie liberal version of that. He is not Asian. He performs Asianness like a white person in California putting on a kimono on Halloween. My dad performs his Hawaiianness. He sees it as like a white person from New York City telling a story of Ho'oponopono in a New York Times bestseller book, or dancing a little hula, or telling a white guy telling an indigenous story at a storytelling festival next to the juggling clowns. Right? Like white people consuming indigeneity as a product, like a Hawaii vacation. My dad consumes indigeneity from an eradicated indigenous mind with whiteness installed, but a liberal hippie version of it. So my dad is the one that has been chopped off. My mom is just like ripped off, severed completely from the Hawaiian culture. She's terrified. She rubs her knuckles and freaks out if anything becomes too actually Hawaiian. She can't deal with it because it was washed. Indigenous people in the Turtle Island and U.S. In Hawaii had their mouths washed out and they're physically abused to get the Hawaiian out. So that's where the severing. That's what I realize now. That's where the severing happened. Like they were still like, as parents go, they're really good parents. Just like as good as you can get under the current circumstances and the situation, as I often say, because enough of the Hawaiianness and the indigeneity like shone through, right? It's still, as much as the colonizer and all of the Danya Inouye and all of the sellout Asian settlers and all the sellout Pacific Island settlers and all the people that were trying to get their cut of America, right? and the Honolulu tourism industry millions, and military built millions, working for the Navy, working for the Marines, fucking programming drones like my cousin does right now, blowing up Iraq like my cousin does right now. He's Hawaiian, blowing up Iraq and Afghanistan. He's probably in the Taiwan Strait trying to start nuclear war while being Hawaiian, Portuguese, Chinese, and Filipino. Like all those people who have done that, they have severed themselves off. And then they come back and they consume their own Hawaiianness from the white mind that they've had installed in them. But, some of them can still, sometimes my mom still like practices a lot of the practices, even though she don't speak any words of Hawaiian. She still practices like, oh, you always feed the keiki, the children, you always feed the kumuna first. Oh, they're still like loving people. They were still like loving people. That's not a white thing to be. So that somehow they actually caring, not like acting like you care, and then I don't know, treating your children like little trophies that order around and make them do whatever you want, and then self-aggrandize you when they grow up, and let them alone. Like at least we had that. So like as it goes, it could be a lot worse. And like so that's like my kuleana is I have to try to help be parents to other children that didn't have any parents, because I had at least kind of some, even though they were fucked up. So, so I tried to be that for like thousands of children on the ghettos of Oahu, right? And all the Tongan Samoan kids, come in and sleeping in front of my classroom, sleeping in tents, I keep going off, but there's so many things here. But this is in case you're wondering, this is a homeless tent city in Kaka'ako that I worked in. I worked in every impoverished indigenous area in Hawaii. If you're from Hawaii, Waianae, think of the worst part of Waianae. I had all the worst kids in Waianae. That's a rough spot. High school, the 16 to 21 year olds, and the children, and the 16 to 21 year olds, the children and adults, and also the it's like 6 to 15 year olds in the STEM class. But this is the homeless tent cities in Hawaii. They don't take you on this one. This is where Neofeud is based on, by the way. It's based on my experiences as a social worker and a STEM teacher, trying to help the kids. And so like this is the area. And the other one is Kapalama Canal. Kapalama Canal. I also work with a kid. It was Kapalama. It was Palolo. It was Waianae. It was Central. That was in the Aiea region. That's the ghetto over there. And it was Waihole on the north side. They have since beat up everybody who was sleeping here, and they beat the shit out of them. That's what the police do. The police number one job in Hawaii. So you get paid the big bucks. Like in the U.S., they pay the police to stand around and let children get murdered in schools. That's what they pay the police, the big bucks and the grenade launchers. $200,000 a year. Stand around and allow child murder, and then arrest parents for trying to actually do your job, like the fucking mom that's like trying to like fight her way past cops to save children, while they stand around and smoke and drink and fucking play Bejeweled or whatever the fuck they're doing. So the police in Hawaii, what they do is they beat up homeless Hawaiians with a nightstick at 1 a.m., destroy all their belongings, including their cell phone, their bike, and their laptop. Crush it in a dumpster, and say, okay, sir and ma'am, and okay, no, give me that, no, and they throw it all in a dumpster, and they say, you have to leave now. So what they do is they take impoverished, opportunity-less, starving Hawaiian, Samoan, Filipino, Tongan, Micronesian children and families, smash all their shit, throw it in a dumpster, and then say, okay, now you got to go underneath the overpass downtown Kalihi. Okay, now you got to go in this other alley. Okay, we're moving you over there. Because you know why? Because we're going to build a nicer mall here, and you're an eyesore. And so now they all live on the side of the highway. They live in behind the back. So that was my job, was to go find all the homeless children and all the homeless families that have been severed off from their own culture and their own realities, and then try to be a surrogate father for all the fatherless Taikas. And feed them because they're starving, because you just destroyed all their animal crackers that they had. You destroyed all the kids, Fruity O's, and all the kids ramen. I mean, it's not the healthiest thing. Too much MSG, too much salt, and too much red dye. But you destroyed all the kids ramen and all of their Twinkies and all of their animal crackers, And so now, I gotta feed all the children and try to stop them from joining the Bloods, the Crips, and getting and selling fucking meth at the age of 12 to survive, like Taika's dad, right? You know, that's my job, and I get paid like I was making so little money. I was walking to work with my fucking holes in my shoes. Literally had no car, and then I get to the office where the big wigs, all the white inside, capitalists inside people selling out their own people, and they're making fun of their holes in my shoes. That's why Carl Carbon has fucking coffee stains all over himself in Neofeud. Is because I was like the shittiest looking person in the office. And by shitty, I mean having no access to money. You know, when you see like this, you know, again, it's all jokes and fun. But you know, the Carl Carbon character, the guy that's smoking, it's a cyberpunk. Again, this is fucking too much to just, you know. I actually thought about doing Neofeud, just like no jokes, fucking all serious as everything, just all in your face. No, this is it's not Neofeud. This is called Hawaii 2020. Fucker. That's what I almost changed Neofeud into just full mask off. No, this is just Hawaii. But then I was like, nobody's gonna buy and play this game. Everybody's just gonna be depressed. Taika actually makes that comment in this interview. He said, he says, I don't make Cannes style films, the kind of depressing drama where, as Taika once put it, everyone is a prostitute and they all die in the end. You know why? Because that's those kind of movies, right? It's just sad, kind of boring. Everyone's a prostitute and everyone dies in the end. Those are for white privileged people who go to Cannes and then summer in Hawaii and then go to the Louvre, right? And call themselves cultured, read a lot of the New York Times bestsellers, and they don't have any actual tragedy in their life at that scale. And so they like watching sad, prostitute, impoverished people have bad times, and then they go back to their happy little fucking lives. That's what Cannes movies are for. And you know, I'm just dunking all over you because I'm upset. But it is. So, anyways, back. But you know, that's what when people ask like, what is Neofeud? That's why Carl is a social worker working with delinquents like Protege, right? But it's a robot kid because it's fucking funny. Mask Off Neofeud is watch 1,000 children all get their parents cut off again and again and again and again, and then go to prison. Watch Taika's dad go to prison. Watch 3-year-olds and 1-year-olds get ripped from mommy's arms again and again and again and again and again and again and again, and then try to feed the starving children after your police have crushed all of their goldfish and their Twizzlers. Do you want to play that game? I don't think you want to play that game. That's what I said. I don't think anybody wants to play that game, you know? That's just depressing. It is depressing. Depressing. I'm sure it's depressing you right now. But you know, that's the reality. But you know, Taika's like, fuck, people don't want to watch that. People don't want to watch that. People want to watch me fucking pretending like this is a machine gun and I'm Rambo holding a piece of kelp and a driftwood log and then making a face. You know? So that's why it's not, you know, because some people have said, seriously, why not just make it like a Hawaii? Seriously, why not just make a thing that's just like your experiences in Hawaii, just like Hawaii? And I'm like, you don't want that. You don't want that. You can't handle the truth. And I don't want to make it either. You know? I was like, you ever thought about my spoons? You know? When I have to relive all that? Or you just want me to give you all of that trauma porn so that you can fucking eat it up and then go back to, I don't know, so happier life. Not being indigenous. Colonizers you should pay everybody who is doing the time and energy and reliving the trauma to educate you. You know? Not just eat it up like an information colonizer, just sucking all of that tasty morsels out and then going to Cannes. and then watching someone else's trauma, like a trauma vampire. Colonizers have no families because everyone is an abused trophy, though. Anyway, I keep losing my track because this is like very upsetting. The parentless native children raised by TV and games are forced to code switch between white and brown worlds that we don't fully belong in and cope with humor to help cushion the trauma in comedy cyberpunk games, in wacky pirate shows, and Michael Jackson Haka crossover. So, in Neofeud, it's wacky comedy cyberpunk games. It's satirical comedy cyberpunk games with John Connor looking robot delinquent kids. This Proto J is a lot like Taika's character in Boy. He's like doing all these antics. He's kind of a silly, wacky little kid, but he's actually he's kind of he's doing some negative things. Like Taika's dad is stealing money, and he's like kind of not being good to his own child. He's like Taika. Let me specifically say, because you might not know Boy. Taika's dad. Sorry. The main character in Boy, which is a heavily autobiographical, but not exactly, is about Taika's indigenous life, being a child of a imprisoned brown father. Taika's dad is kind of silly. Like he's like when he comes back and he's partying with his kid. His kid likes to like pretend to like have a machine gun and be Rambo-ish. The good times are he's like driving around. And then they're having fun pretending to be samurai, and dad is like, they're doing all fun stuff. But then dad disappears, right? And dad like doesn't really want to hang out with the kid when it's hard and like take care of your kid, right? And also dad's in prison, so he is, and then he's like lying to it. He's like, "Mom, I need money. Mom, I need money. Mom, I need money." And mom doesn't have any money. Taika's dad, he did like rip off a 7-Eleven. He thinks of himself as he's a big gangster, right? Taika's dad was in a gang called Satan's Slaves. I mean, they weren't huge, but they were like knocking over. They're just getting into. They're like all the kids in Kalihi Palama, and like knocking over the 7-Eleven, jumping the fence and trying to grab some DVDs from somewhere. Getting into antics. Getting into fist fights with each other. I mean, sometimes they're actual gangs and people getting. One year, like there were like at least one stabbing or shooting every week in the Marites housing. That was when I was there. One of my kids actually, I don't want to talk about it, but, kids in my class died. Let's put it that way. In inter-gang warfare. A lot more of them got rounded up by the cops and they got sent to Arizona to mechanically separate your Tyson chicken nuggets forever. But, some of them died in, that there was like, not all of them were super serious gangs, but there were elements of Bloods, Crips, and other gangs in the neighborhoods, and some of them wound up in that. But anyway, so my point is that like, but they're just kind of like trying to survive and live these imaginary fun lives. Taika Waititi's Taika Waititi's character, right, the kind of wayward ex-prisoner, non-present father, does get into a run-in with like a more serious older biker gang, and they beat the shit out of him and his two younger buddies. He's like 20 something, right? But it's kind of like he's trying his best, but it's like, it's kind of like, and it's always kind of like, I would always tell the kids in my classes, I didn't necessarily like the colonizer, but the society, right? The settler colonial capitalist U.S. illegal state of Hawaii's constructed society. The world has failed you, but the world has to do 50%, but you have to do your 50%. I would always, kind of say like, yes, your mom sucks. Yes, the police beat you up. Yeah, the police look at you and then they beat you in the face because you look like you could be micro. That's a slang slur against people that are of Micronesian descent, and that's part of the Hawaiianness. Hawaiians and Samoans and Filipinos and Portuguese and all these other people who have taken on and they've joined the NY and they joined the police department of the U.S. HPD, and they beat up on people that are convenient, right? And they destroy all the homeless people's stuff, right? So that tourists can make more money and evict everyone in Hawaii, right? Those cops are themselves, they look for the ones that are the newer, later immigrants that's part of their stormtrooperification, right? Becoming part of the Roman Empire, the new endless Roman Empire. So, anyways, but so, like, it's like the kids would say like, well, I got beat up by cops. I got attacked. My mom is in prison. My dad and my mom's in prison. I can't do any homework. I don't have anywhere to write. I'm living in a homeless shelter and I got raped in the homeless shelter. That's another big problem. constantly getting sexually assaulted, and it's like, you know, almost it's kind of gross, but I was almost it's like Sweden, but you know, it's like there's constant sexual assault and rape. My parents are physically and, you know, all kind of ways abusing me. My foster parents are terrible. They beat the shit out of me. I can't do any work. I can't do your math and your STEM class. I can't learn about occupation and knowledge. I don't know what is 75 divided by 6. My job was to help them get to the 7th, 8th grade level and then get a high school diploma in one of my classes, competency-based diploma. I can't do that because the world sucks. And I'll be like, well, yeah, the world sucks. Like, but like, you have to try your 50%. You have to do whatever you can do, you know, to try your best to make it better. If not just for you, you have a kid. You're 20 years old. You have a child. You have a responsibility. You have a kuleana to that child. You cannot just say the world sucks, so I'm going to fuck my child up worse than me. What kind of Hawaiian is that? What kind of human is that? The world fucked you, and now you got 16 and pregnant. You have a child. You're gonna make that child's life worse than you, and you're gonna make another Taika. You have a response. The world has colonization in this space, and then you're non-white person inside of this ghetto. They've ripped you out of your homeland. They've done all those things. But you have to still, doesn't matter how hard it gets. It doesn't matter how hard it is, how hard it gets. You have to still fight for the future and your own, and the children and everyone after you. Otherwise, you're just as bad as the Americans who fucked you up. I mean, I don't say that, but like, you are just becoming, you say, well, I got fucked, so I'm going to fuck you. I'm going to get mine. I'm going to go knock off this thing. And that's a major part of Neofeud, because the main character, the protege, the delinquent child is like dealing drugs. He's like he's doing heists. He's like ripping off shit, and it's like, fuck you, I'm going to get mine, and the world fuck me, and I'm going to blame the world. I'm going to blame my parents. I'm going to blame the cops. I'm going to blame everyone else. I'm just going to like, it's not about saving the world. It's about saving yourself, right? That's Cyberpunk 2077 and Cyberpunk 2020's theme. And it's like, that's what they want all indigenous people to fall into. Is the imperial, colonial, Roman realism, which is like, this is the unhealed realism. This is the only way to be, and what I gotta do is make enough money by becoming a basketball star in the NBA, or I'm gonna be Kanye West, and I'm gonna make $1 million selling Yeezy shoes, and that's what I'm gonna do, and that's what they try to do, and I say, don't do that. I mean, listen to Public Enemy, you know, let's read some Malcolm X. And they'd be like, fuck you, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go be in the NBA. And then they get shot by cops. So you have a responsibility. Everyone has a responsibility. That's, you know, that's what I try my best. But, you know, it's like, I did that for 10 years. But we have to try our best to make sure that we're leaving the children and the land and everything else better than we left it. If we are individually, just, you know, giving up because we had it hard. Motherfucker, there's somebody who had it much harder in another place. Most of the planet actually is called the global south. You know, and we're not even actually in that. So there's a lot of people in Iraq and Afghanistan and Africa and everywhere else. They need, you know, those people who don't have any electricity that are getting fucking drone strikes still, who have starved to death, people like Luna's grandparents, and these people that are still suffering that situation. Those people, you know, those people don't, you know, the Vietnamese didn't go, oh my God, my life was so hard because I literally had to eat crickets to live, and my mom and dad's entire village was incinerated to ash. And I had it so hard, I'm going to be a Vietnamese gangster and try to make $1 million. Do you see the Vietnamese doing that? No, you know why? Because, well, they're attached to a healed indigenous culture, that's why. And Luna Oi can go back to the rice paddy and the family and have a parent who suffered horribly but are still connected to an actual history and their actual family. They're not severed at the pico in Vietnam. They're not chopped off at the juncture between the past generations and 70 generations back and 70 in the future. They are strained, they are burnt, they are damaged. Like all of that, the strands that weave back through time are burnt and severed and deeply damaged, but they still have them. And they're not, and importantly, not to say that you're gone and you are hopeless because you don't speak any Hawaiian, you don't know anything about your culture, you don't know shit. There's never no hope. But as bad as it gets, they still are in the direction of we are in the bomb to the Stone Age. We have like no food, we have no infrastructure, we have no electricity to watch any movies or TV. If you're watching anything, you're watching a stream, you're already more privileged than 90% of those people. And that's the way that I think about it. I'm like, but Kuleana ultimately is not really even to people like right here. It's people like all the way over there. People in fucking, all the people that are starving to death in every country the U.S. is trying to make permanent sanctions of wheat and everything else in by backing further nuclear war and possibly nuclear war in Europe and in Asia. So like those people, but the thing is, those people that are able to maintain and stay connected in that way, as bad as it gets, they don't just go, oh fuck this, man, I'm just gonna get mine in this hellscape. If you told a Vietnamese it's not about saving the world, it's about saving. You just told a Cuban, hey Cuban communists who defeated America 750 times trying to assassinate your communist leader. Hey Cubans, it's not about saving the world, it's about saving yourself. They would laugh you out of that country. If you told the indigenous Bolivian Socialist Party, hey Bolivians, it's not about saving the world, you should just have a Bolivian, aim for having a Bolivian president, a Bolivian basketball player, and a Bolivian rock star, and putting a Bolivian flag on the side of Bolivia's missiles that they send to American militaries. The Bolivian socialist indigenous movement would laugh you out of their country. They'd be like, what are you talking about? What a sad, depressing thing to aspire to save yourself rather than to save all of the indigenous and all of our people, our country, our heritage, all of our planet. Even if you attempted to do what you say to save yourself, you will be lost anyway. You will be lost inside. What an empty void you have tricked yourself into falling, American person who is black or brown. Now you come here and you tell me that's what you aspire to. Nobody would, but that's because people don't even realize how severed off that they are in the West. Anyway, I know it's probably too intense. That's more intense than I planned it to be, but it's. I knew it was gonna be when I started talking when I brought up that topic. So the parentless native children, but that raised by TV and games are forced to code switch between. So anyway, another way to think about it is we have the luxury of the electricity, unlike the vast majority of a lot of African countries, Asian countries, and a lot of indigenous people around the world. We have the luxury of not being cut off fully from all of those, at least material resources. So we have to take those that we have, like any schooling, any electricity, any clothes. Like indigenous communities in Paraguay, the campesinos, they get a rice sack and then they say, go ahead and sew your own clothes for your children from this rice sack. You get paid in a rice sack for a week's worth of work, and then hopefully you don't starve this week. So since we have access to any food, you're not actually starving. Not yet. And electricity and Netflix and video games, we have a kuleana. We have a responsibility to try to unplug from the matrix of the empire and pull as people out and reconnect them to their ancestors, to their heritage, to their world heritages, to their world culture in humorous ways that they can access, like cyberpunk video games, or science fictional movies like Thor Ragnarok, or wacky pirate shows like Our Flag Means Death, and Michael Jackson Haka crossovers, and Reservation Dogs, because that's I'm speaking a lot for Taika. I feel like I'm almost like I'm like the purifier for the necromongers. That's a bad example because Taika's not a bad. He's not like an emperor, but I am like the ambassador for Taika right now. But I'm not. I could just be reading all this into, and this has nothing to do with him. So you take everything I'm saying with the grain of Hawaiian salt and Maori driftwood. Take it with a grain of Maui driftwood. What Maori, not Maui. What I'm saying, but what I at least for me, what I personally do is take all of these experiences that I have, because I can't undo these experiences, Actually, in Braiding Sweetgrass, there's a really great passage that's like um, in indigenous wisdom and knowledge. What is it like? Uh, Wait, is it Tonto? What is his name? Oh crap, shit. I'm trying to find this one passage. What is the Lone Ranger? What is the Lone Ranger's friend? Yeah, this is a passage from Braiding Sweetgrass where the author says in the really what we I cook dinner pulling utensils from cupboards labeled Mkwanen Nagin. I have become a woman who speaks Potawatomi to household objects. That's the indigenous language of the author of Braiding Sweetgrass. When the phone rings, I barely glance at the post-it. When I open the I dopnen the giktogan, and whether it is a solicitor or a friend, they speak English. Once a week or so, it is my sister from the West Coast who says bonjour. I know that one from our relative Dickie's greeting. I think is that bonjour. I could be mispronouncing that. Dickie is often in our stream. Anyway, motewenka nda, as if she needed to identify herself. Who else speaks Potawatomi? To call it speaking my indigenous language is a stretch. Really, all we do is blurt garbled phrases to each other in a parody of conversation. How are you? I am fine. Go to town. See bird. Red. Fry bread. Good. We sound like Tonto's side of the Hollywood dialogue with the Lone Ranger. Me try talk good Injun way. On the rare occasion when we actually can string together a halfway coherent thought, we freely insert high school Spanish words to fill in the gaps, making a language we call Spanawatomi. Tuesday, anyway, so it's talking about like she's like regretting because the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which I'm currently reading it with a bunch of friends and relatives and a lot of people. Akemi was the one who brought this to me, so shout out to Akemi. I know Akemi doesn't want any shout outs, but Braiding Sweetgrass is a book that Akemi brought to my attention. I'm going to be speaking to Akemi tomorrow, by the way. Akemi is indigenous Luchuan / Okinawan. Anyways, so the author doesn't speak the language. There were 9 speakers of the language. That's how severed off from culture and family that people was. Right? The 9 speakers evaded somehow, hiding in the woods from the American social work, Indian system, the police, and other U.S. state apparatuses, and other settlers, just average people who hunted down indigenous people. And the 9 people who still spoke Potawatomi fluently, only 9. Only 3 of them could walk. The other 5 were they were like very infirm. They had to have canes and they could barely stand. Of the 9 surviving speakers, right, they only survived because they literally went and endangered themselves and hid out far away from anything to keep speaking it. Like the people who still speak Hawaiian, my mom, it's been eradicated out of my mom. It's gone. Successful colonization. A lot of my mom's side eradicated. They're all Catholic. My dad's Catholic. Mom and dad super Catholic, super Christian. A lot of my aunt's side super Christian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's about 12 out of 13 of my parents' generation wiped out the Hawaiian. Gone. No Hawaiian. They're just American, Christian, Catholic, liberals, or conservatives. There's 1 Hawaiian like fluent speaker, maybe 1, and he is queer. That's the queer indigenate. That's what they're already outside because they're queer. Indigenous people are just like queerness is just totally as accepted. The concept of gender is like, and the concept of people and nature being completely separate and one above the other is also different. But it's important that it is the queer relative that is carrying on the culture in the family. Hawaiian language and culture. All the other ones, I don't know who the fuck cares. We're all American now. So, but anyway, back to this. So the author is lamenting in this chapter about the animus, the grammar of animacy, about how I don't speak my language because it was ripped out of me. And it's talking about all I can do is kind of blurb out a few little bits of sentences, and I can only speak in this kind of little pre-kindergarten level. It's not really speaking it. This is a cruel mockery of it. That's what the author says that. Today, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 12:15 Oklahoma time, I joined the Potawatomi lunchtime language class. streaming from tribal headquarters via the internet. There are usually about 10 of us from all over the country. Together, we learn to count to say, pass the salt. Someone asks, how do you say, please pass the salt? The teacher, Justin Neely, a young man devoted to language revival, explains, by the way, there's a lot of white people making a lot of money selling indigenous people their language back to them and copyrighting indigenous language. So I just want to bring that one up. I didn't bring that up yet, but that's a thing. Where was that one? I think Nick Estes. Tomorrow we're gonna have the indigenous Pacific peoples with Akemi, and Sherry Berry is also known as Maki Ro and is indigenous Lutruan, which is called Okinawa language teacher as well. So that's actually Akemi's teacher. But anyways, where is it? Okay. No, I lost it. There it is. No, that's not it. It's the one about the language. I swear to God, I just retweeted it, but I might have lost it. This is the one. Yeah. As a native Hawaiian whose children are still punished for speaking Hawaiian in schools, learning some white guy is making money selling our indigenous language back to us is gross. So this guy, this is a white guy who grew up in the 1980s, joined a group of white hobbyists who appropriated indigenous culture by dressing up as Native Americans, living in teepees and smoking peace pipes. So we had a lot of fun playing Indian. A lot of people, like the people who made Horizon Forbidden West. So a lot of Germans and Europeans who like to play Indian and steal their culture and make money from it, like in the video game Horizon Forbidden West. Prey is a based game with indigenous people. Prey 2006. But anyway, no matter how it was collected, where it was collected, when it was collected, our language belongs to us, says Ray Taken Alive, a Lakota teacher. A white man helped Lakota elders preserve their language and then tried to sell it back to them. So he's literally denying indigenous people their own language and selling it back to them to make money. So this is like the end phase. You're taking your own ashes of your own ancestors that you've burned and then selling the carbon back to like a coal factory to like reconstitute it to just get the last bit of colonial, plunder out of that dead body of your indigenous older race. That's indigenous people are older than the Europeans by about 10 to 60,000 years. Africa is 70,000 years old. Asia is 30,000. Indigenous Turtle Islanders are at least tens of thousands years old. Europe is a 9,000-year-old and misguided, crux of civilization if you look at the microliths. But anyways, so this is when you take indigenous language and now you're selling it back to indigenous people at profit and then harming them actively. And for example, Duolingo has Kamehameha Schools, a genocidal boarding school facility that was classified as a boarding school facility by an American investigation. Kamehameha Schools, making the curriculum full of Christianized anti-Hawaiian sentences like "be with God" as an intro for when you learn Hawaiian through Duolingo. They use super Christianized language, like how are you? Are you today with Jesus? It's like that's not a common Hawaiian greeting. That is part of the genocidal Kamehameha Schools boarding school facilities a version of Hawaiian, right? And it's like that's actually not. It's very it's incredibly fucked up. Not unusual for a Westerner to pretend to be saving language while making money destroying indigenous language. That's a normal thing to do. That's just the Democratic Party. That's all they do, is make money pretending to be good people. And then here, we see you, we hear you. Now you're going. It's like the Republicans are. We see you, Black Lives Matter. We see you, socialists. We see you, People's Forum. We see you, Hispanic people crossing the border. We see you. We hear you. Now you're going to prison. The Republicans are just like, you're going to prison. So this is really fucked up though. So there's a lot of this where they're just like selling your language back to you. I'm not saying that you can't use Duolingo. I'm just like, it's fucked up that you're making money and like that bullshit is inside of the Hawaiian language lessons, right? My parents are Christian as a part of the eradication of their Hawaiianness. My dad fights my brother and my sister on their Hawaiianness, saying, you have to go to church, stop practicing this not real Hawaiian stuff. I've been in fights with my dad too about this kind of stuff. Christianity saved so many native people of Turtle Island. The Pilgrims did nothing wrong. America did nothing wrong. My dad will go to the mat. He will go to the mat on that. I have to fight him all the time. Dad, why are you saying that? We're all colonized. I mean, he's a good. He was still like, he's a lot of ways he's really good. As my parents are more Hawaiian. It's subconsciously the colonization hasn't been able to eradicate their subconscious ways of being, of like caring for their kids, trying to be there as much as possible, feeding everybody, taking care of everybody. My parents cook for everyone else 3 times as much. They still give like it's luau, not like it's Waikiki luau, which is capitalist, rich people making money selling Hawaiian culture with impoverished Hawaiians. My parents do actual luau. They cook like 5 times too much food, and they bring it because that's what you do. You just give everything away. They don't know why they do that. They don't know why they still are parents when everyone else is a parentless, making their children into little trophies for to self-aggrandize. Right? That's what all white parents are. And the colonizer parents, and you yell at your children and you abuse them and you treat them like little objects, not as humans, right? My parents treated us like humans. That's why everybody loved my parents. Everybody loved my parents. All the kids, they'll come around my parents' house. Because to my mind, think about it now, that was the indigeneity of child rearing, of sharing of food, doing luau, living aloha, feeding and housing and clothing people, taking care of people, that shone through the Christian genocide of their Hawaiianness and their terror to speak their own language. But their soul remembers. Their mind has eradicated all the neurons that could say, ua malke e o ka ana i ka pono, and know what that meant. But their soul, their fiber of their being remembers somehow. But everything, so anyways, but back to this story though. Many nights. So this is a story. This story is actually directly related to what we're talking about, right? Why is Taika Waititi the way that Taika Waititi is? It's the same story here. It's important for indigenous people, and it includes African people. It includes Asian people. It includes people of Turtle Island, of all North, South, Central, the Americas. It includes all of the Pacific people. It's virtually almost everybody in the world, with the exception of a few collaborators in most of the countries of Europe. What's called Europe, which is not really a continent. It is an unhealed project, Europe itself. The concept of it, NATO. And so those people, we have to remember that you are not alone in this experience. You're not alone in this experience. There's a lot of experiences that I thought I was alone in, and like every week I'm learning I'm not alone in them. Like being a weird goth alt POC who listened to the Smashing Pumpkins and was weird but not white. I'm like, I just had an alt goth panel and everybody's like, no, I had that experience. Like so much the same. I'm not even from anywhere close. I'm like 10,000 miles from you. I had the same experience. People on the other side of the world have these experiences. And we have to remember that like part of empire and capitalist and colonial realism is convincing you that you are the only one feeling this. You should get over it. You shouldn't get over it. I'm not saying don't, just wake up and stay up all night worrying about it. But you should not simply let it go and just become an American. Let it go and just become a good subject of the Western liberal capitalist human rights and freedom respecting democracies that never were and aren't still. You shouldn't. You should try to reconnect with as severed off as they have made, as severed off as they have tried to make you, we should still try to reconnect with these heritages. That's why we try to do what we do, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be clumsy. You're going to feel like an idiot. You're going to feel like it's a waste of time. The author says, I feel like I've wasted months of my life learning this language that 50 people speak. I can never use it. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my time learning my language. Potawatomi. Waste of time. I'm talking to Post-it notes and my dog in Tonto bullshit ease. It's not even real Otowatomi. It's fucking Spanawatomi. Because the author is like having frustration. So the experience, and when I read that, I was like, oh my God. Feeling that imposter syndrome and the frustration of like, I got to spend all this time to learn a language I'm never going to use. I can't sell video games in this language to millions of people that I need to. I can't use this to talk to all these other people that, I'm never gonna fucking talk to. I want to talk to myself in my Microsoft Word document, writing Hawaiian words down and then reading them back to myself. Like writing it down on a post-it note and reading it back to myself. And then having a feel-good ceremony every 2 weeks on Zoom or on Discord, and then doing a panel, and then everybody feels good, and then we go back to not using it. That is not, you are not alone in the experience of feeling lost, trying to recapture the ancestors and their languages and their realities that have been severed from you. That is a common experience. To feel silly. Like, what the fuck am I doing? To feel like a pretender. I'm a pretendian. I'm just pretending to be Hawaiian. I'm not a real Hawaiian. I don't know shit. That is a common experience. To feel like an imposter. I'm just putting this on to make some money today. I'm just trying to get attention. I'm not a real Hawaiian. I'm not a real Anishinaabe. I'm not a real Potawatomi. I'm not a real Okinawan, Luchuan person. I'm not a real African person. I put a Pan-African symbol, but I'm American as fuck. I don't know shit about any of this shit. I'm full of shit. That is a common experience. And like, it is it's real, it's common. Like, colonization happened, you know? But that, like, again, like the kid that says, you know what, man? Fuck, man. My mom is gone. My dad's in prison. I don't know. My grandma went off to go do something. I don't know, man. Fuck this. I'm going to join the gang. I'm going to get mine. And they say, the world has fucked you. The world has severed you off. You know, Samoan child at Farrington who dropped out, and now you're trying to sell, you know, you're trying to boost cars, and you're dropping meth on the side, you know, and you mistreating your girlfriend, and you're trying to be a fucking rapper. Hey, the world has fucked you. And yeah, you're kind of fucked up right now, you know, just like Taika's dad. Don't give up. Your son still needs you. Don't give up. All those people still need you. Oh man, I don't know how to speak my language. This is fucking silly. I'm not gonna do this. Fuck this. I'm just gonna go be an American. I'm just gonna go work at the university and just listen to the liberal shit, do a land acknowledgement when I got to, make 50,000, 80,000, whatever, and I'm just gonna survive the collapse of I'm just gonna pay my rent and my mortgage. I'm just gonna go work at the Zippies. I'm just gonna play my shitty Call of Colonialism video game and just chill out and fuck this. Fuck this. This is too hard. This is too painful. Everybody has that experience. Not everybody, but it is a common experience, especially for indigenous people trying to recapture and get back to their heritage. And it's going to feel weird, you know? And there's not a correct way to do it. But what I do know is that there is no map for that territory, you know? We have to be creative, and we have to create the indigenous future that we have to eventually live in, because there is no unhealed Aquilan Roman broken life way future. There is no American future. I'm so sorry. There is no United States future. It's not united, and it's all fucking fake. There is no pan-European NATO-led future. There is one for the people who once were healed somewhere in that place that is now deeply damaged and it has not healed for millennia. It's like Vecna. It's been growing into a wall of pustulant wrong and nastiness forever, and it feels like you can never come back, right? But like, there is no future there. So anyway, we have to still, as painful and as hard and as like silly and weird and imposter and fake as you feel trying to like do this, there is no alternative. Like, not to quote Tina Thatcher from Decolonizers of Margaret Thatcher, like, this is indigenous realism. You know, there's capitalist realism, there's colonial realism. The indigenous realism is, the reality is that there is no alternative to ending capitalism and colonialism. That's the thing there's no alternative to. It's the opposite of there is no alternative to capitalism. There is no alternative to reconnecting and recapturing this. Now we can still choose to not, and then we sentence all of the earth and all of the future generations to some kind of 25 different ends of the world, and we fail the ancestors. We fail the earth. We fail each other. We fail the children. We fail the great grandchildren who won't be born because we said YOLO. We became American. We became capitalist. We became Roman. We became the broken people who said, fuck everyone outside of me right now this quarter. I'm going to get mine, and I'm going to not see me as an interconnected web with my relatives through time spiraling out of this moment into the past and into the future. Fuck all that shit. Fuck it. It's too hard. I feel silly. I feel like a dumbass. I'm not making as much money because people are leaving because people want to hear white socialism is good and they don't want to deal with hard shit, and I want to get more viewers on whatever, Insta, Twitchgram, whatever, and my university, my corporate job, whatever. I don't want to do it. I just want to get mine. And if patriot socialism becomes national socialism and is actually just crypto fascism and America just goes full Nazi, fuck, I don't care. I'm in my personal underground New Zealand bunker with my robot servants next to Mark Zuckerberg. So it's not about saving the world. It's about being a Westerner, and if we all do that, then we're all fucked. Anyways, and also it doesn't really, to me, if we have actually started to understand the teachings, right? And we understand what we actually understand the lessons, then we start to understand that what we, you're making real progress when you understand that it's not about you, right? That's like the basic lesson. That's like again, I would talk about Doctor Strange, right? Which is about is a white people co-opting indigenous heritage and making giant Hollywood movies about it, right? And putting a white person as the ancient elder one, right? You start to get it when you actually understand, and you start to open up your actual your heart, and you understand that you are not. It's not all about you, and that's just a cat poster. That's a platitude. But it's also like to really get that and understand that and to act in that way. That's how you know. You might not have all the language back. And I wanted to kind of get to that part because that part is like a very powerful part of this passage. So the author is saying, I know I left this on the screen for a while. How do you say please pass the salt? The teacher, Justin Neely, a young man devoted to language revival, explains that while there are several words for thank you, there is no word for please. Food was meant to be shared, no added politeness needed. It was simply a cultural given that one was asking respectfully. Missionaries took this absence as further evidence of crude manners. You didn't need to say please. There's some thank you, but because there's a lot about the values that are baked into the language as well here in this chapter. But So many nights when I should be grading papers, paying bills, again, I gotta get mine. I gotta get it done. And we do have to pay bills. I'm not saying don't pay bills. We still got to do that shit. But it was just why we are very grateful for all the Patreon support and everybody who picks up Neofeud and supports us, because we have to live in the physical universe and reality, along with Aina and all of our non-human relatives who also have to live in reality. But when I should be grading papers or paying bills, I'm at the computer running through Potawatomi language drills. After months, I have mastered the kindergarten vocabulary and can confidently match the pictures of animals to their indigenous names. It reminds me of reading picture books to my children. Can you point to the squirrel? Where is the bunny? All the while, I'm telling myself that I really don't have the time for this. What's more, little need to know the words for bass and fox anyway. Since our tribal diaspora left us scattered to the four winds, who would I talk to? It's a good question. The simple phrases I'm learning are perfect for my dog. Sit, eat, come here, be quiet. But since she scarcely responds to these commands in English, I'm reluctant to train her to be bilingual. Admiring student once asked me if I spoke my native language. I was tempted to say, oh yes, we speak Potawatomi at home, me, the dog, and the post-it notes. Our teacher tells us not to be discouraged and thanks us every time a word is spoken. Thanks us for breathing life into the language, even if we only speak a single word. But I have no one to talk to, I complain. None of us do, he reassures, but someday we will. So that's another important thing is, we have to have faith that that's why we make sure that at least our kids, we do learn, they're learning it. I never learned anything. I didn't learn any Hawaiian language, Like I said, our Hawaiian class was like, here's some coloring books about ancient, savage, barbaric Hawaiians that might have lived sometime a long time ago. Now they're all dead. They're gone. You're an American now. Color in this book. Color in the thatched hut yellow. Color in the grass green. Color in the Hawaiian lei green. Color in this half-naked woman brown. And color in this canoe brown. Color in the ocean blue. Color in the paddle. Color in the tiki god brown. Okay, good. Hawaiian class is over. Now back to American history, where everything they do is good and save the universe, bring in democracy. So I dutifully learn the vocabulary, but I find it hard to see the heart of our culture. Translating the bed and silk, and Mo Potoa told me learning nouns is pretty easy after all. Anyways, there's a lot more. The important thing was like at the very end, it's like it's difficult, it's hard, Like I'm trying with Neofeud too. Like here's something I was working on. This is kind of a little aside after all of that. But I was working on some stuff for Neofeud too, like trying to incorporate more in when I'm not making panels, teaching kids, fixing stuff around the house, programming video games, doing art and writing for video games, and doing 55 other things. Like Taika, actually kind of keeping everything. It's pretty busy, but I am also painting. I'm reworking this portrait. Let me see if I can find that. For these are indigenous. They're alien characters, but they're like again is Asian and Pacific Islander inspired, specifically Hawaiian and other cultures that are of my heritage because I'm of multiple. And where was the portrait there? I was just working on it. Is it this one? Let me just check. Oh no, that's the staff. Yeah. Well, all of the characters design is based on my Asian and Pacific Islander heritage. That's one of the. So I was trying to rework one of these portraits. That's the one. Yeah. So I was like, I was trying to rework the portraits to try to include more aspects of my heritage. And there's like scenes in the game that I'm trying to like incorporate more. It's not again like Neofeud 2 is not set in the real world Hawaii. Obviously, it's like it's a fantasy science fiction, and it's a lot of it is comedy and a game. But the character, the character also I want it to be there. I want them to be infused. They're all of the characters that are of this species to be infused with a lot of the characteristics and the history and are connected at least spiritually. Digitally in a video game, in thousands of lines of computer code and electrons, but still connected to the history that was severed off from my parents and their parents before them. Back to, the 1800s, we certainly had a lot more access. We was colonization, but we had world's first universal healthcare system, the highest literacy rate, right? Socialist, anti-imperialist country that was leading the world and helped inspire China and actually brought the future, what would be leader of the greatest socialist indigenous civilization on earth today. And that is a big country that people are upset because some upset student yelled at some tank drivers and nobody was killed there. Anyways, so the indigenous heritage, I wanted to be infused in the game. So anyway, this is part of like how I try my best to reconnect and honor those things and try to tell the stories in a way. And I have written a lot of science fiction and cyberpunk just in general mainstream Western science fiction, industry style. So I know how to do that. It is not clear. I don't understand. I don't fully understand. Like I have a lot of this art, about producing an indigenous about what an indigenous future looks like. Like I have the indigenous people, like I have their language. I'm inventing an entire language based on indigenous Hawaiian, Maori, Samoan. Some of it is actually Chinese and Vietnamese because I have Asian heritage too. For this, there's an entire indigenous planet. This is like another scene from the place where I'm making I'm working on a kind of Decolonizer / Neofeud 2
prototype that I might make into a little mini game. It's part of it is to help me figure out what I'm doing in Neofeud 2. But like, where is that? I'm trying to figure out what in the video games that I do make, right, in the art that I do make, what because Neofeud 1 was very much, taking the tropes of science fiction and cyberpunk, right, taking the Western media and culture that I've been raised with and trying to like kind of turn it on its head to attack these racist colonialist capitalist systems that have harmed myself and lots of other people, right? And then Neofeud 2 is involving more trying to design a future that, the storyteller, like the Kilo Hoku, right? It's like the navigators, right, of the ancient Pacific, Hawaiian, and lots of other peoples who are much more adept and much more adept at navigation. I was just reading about the Satawal and other Micronesian peoples have entire universities that have not been properly acknowledged by some people. The depths of their ability to do indigenous wayfinding of these peoples is beyond even what we even know. They still have access to it. It just they haven't acknowledged it. But there is a future in which part of the technology of imagining this future where all of that is honored and then connected into a future where artificial suns, which are being invented and leading by indigenous people, right? Because the Chinese are indigenous. I don't know if you know this. 56 ethnic regions, indigenous for thousands of years to a place. Tens of thousands of years, actually, but at least 5,000. And Vietnamese, 4,000 to 6,000 years for most of the people. They can trace their peoples and their lands and their heritages and their languages, etc. Their pottery, their art, their clothing. They can trace these things back. And they are not severed off. I would argue the reason why East Asia has some of the most successful socialist, environmental, racial, just great successes of living sustainably and living in mutual respect and living in a healed way is because they have been the least, for historical and geographical reasons, severed off by the colonizational era. Africa was horribly ripped apart. Really, people ripped out of the land. Turtle Island, of course, huge genocide. Barely a handful of speakers left for most languages and cultures, just shredded economically, spiritually, culturally, linguistically. Hawaii, deeply broken. A lot of the Pacific, nuclearly broken. But not to say that they didn't suffer. They absolutely did. They had to fight like hell for it to maintain themselves, to undo their own internal problems of the whatever hierarchies had, a lot of it due to colonization, but some other lasting, lingering internal problems. But now that they've undone, in the Marxist term, they call it the contradictions, right? But sometimes it's just called injustices that need to be made pono. And so when you have made those, pono means righteous, making right. And so those people have had the most experience, and that's why they are inventing artificial suns that are 120 million degrees and last 1,000 times longer than any Western nuclear fusion system, right? And they have things like 30 trillion times faster quantum supercomputers. They have things like the most most renewable and most advanced renewable technology, the most undesertification, regreening of the planet Earth. They are leading in win-win international cooperation, in ethnic, in respect and making right the relationship between the ethnic minority and ethnic majority. The West is not even trying, U.S. and Europe included. But they're making that advancement because, I would argue, in large part because they still have the connections, and they have the, not just the connections, but they are connected to their ancestors and their teachings. They are not living out of, they're not broken as badly and made into stormtroopers nobody is free from these clutches of the descendants of the Roman trauma, but they are most able and best able to resist it. Cuba is also a major one inside of the Turtle Island, the North Central South America region, and but not just them. There's a lot of other ones that are coming out from this. Bolivia, I would argue, the reason why Bolivia is the greatest economic and socialist miracle in South America and Central America, actually. And when you add the scale, it's actually amazing. is, I would argue, in large part because they are 60% indigenous and they are leading that struggle with socialism, which is what the United States needs. But I mean, we have a long way to go there, but sooner or later, we have to get there. And so Neofeud 2 is a lot of trying to figure out how do we like reincorporate the indigenous heritages, the healed civilization, and bring that into a science fictional adventure game in a way that isn't, because we can't just go back to the past. We can't just be like living in 1500. The native Hawaiians were living in 2150, right? When Hawaii and the U.S. has universal health care again, right? I would argue that the 1850s Hawaiians, right, the Kalakawas who invented the subaquatic vehicles when Jules Verne wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, who had electricity in our capital before the White House, right, who had mass transit and railroads and ferries to have really, things that people wish they had in the United States. Hawaiians were living in 2150 in 1850, I would argue. So we have to live like it's 2250 in 2022. That is also part of our indigenous heritage. That is, if you see, like the Chinese are not going, you know what we're going to do? The Vietnamese are not going, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go back to living how the Vietnamese lived in 200 AD. Do they do that? No, they don't do that. They don't like discard what the Vietnamese did in 200 AD and the great fights that lesbian women generals and political leaders who fought on the front lines of wars that are actually to stop invaders, not to colonize and genocide and steal, right? They honor all of their history and Ho Chi Minh and all of their collective struggles under socialism against the U.S. empire, against colonialism and capitalism. They honor all of that history, but they're not living in 1950 or in 1850 or in 1650 or in 200 AD or in 1000 BC or in 5000 BC. They live in 2022 and they work towards 2250 on a socialist path that they have looked at and laid out. And that requires a lot of imagination and science fictional thinking and imagining. And, if seven generational thinking, people say, seven generational thinking, we have to think about the great grandchildren. That's indigenous thinking. And it is. But it's kind of a little water cooler slogan for land acknowledgement people sitting around a corporate office or university office talking about all of the indigenous, people that they talk to this week, and they don't know shit about them actually. Oh, seven generational thinking. It's just like it's like a thing you say at the book club at the New York Times somewhere in downtown Manhattan. Oh, it is it sounds really good. Seven generational thinking. We have to think in deep time. But seven generational thinking also means like concretely thinking and envisioning, not just like, oh, we would like to do some environmentalism today. No, it's like, what is the world we're building given our modern technology and what we have access to, and how can we develop? Like, that's what the Bolivians do. They're going, how are we going to take artificial intelligence programmed by indigenous Bolivians in the outskirts of the Guarani areas that are now rapidly developing and have high-speed rail connecting to the Silk Road? How are we going to take artificial intelligence programmed by the indigenous Bolivian Guarani, Quechua, and Aymara, use that to make glass, use the AI to automate the process of making glass bottles to put, Coke, Pepsi, and indigenous soda or water or anything else in, and then sell on the sales of the AI-powered factory, use that to leapfrog the West in terms of quantum technology. That's what they're literally thinking about right now. Now that I was reading an article about this from New Malta, and using the sales, using modern economics and Marxist-Leninist analyses of capitalism to have a generation of fun. That was a problem that Hawaiians were talking about yesterday, by the way, about the Hawaiian Literature Conference. We don't have the funding to get. We need. It's a catch-22. We don't have the funding to get the funding to make the classes to have people speaking the language, and when people speaking the language to read the books to get the funding, and nobody's going to buy the books because they don't speak the language. But we need to make the books. Where's the money going to come? So there was a Kaho Akahi, who's actually a leader on Mauna Kea, a native Hawaiian indigenous leader, was saying, it's a kind of circle that we haven't figured out the economic engine so that we can make books, to sell the books in a sovereign way, make the money from selling the books to people who read the books about Hawaii in Hawaiian, to make the more, and we don't have the funding mechanism to get the money to pay for the grant, right? Because this is one thing I'm going to say, it's going to piss off a lot of people who rely on grants, universities, and NGOs and nonprofits. When you rely on grants, NGOs, universities, and profits built by a settler colonial capitalist empire, they're gonna cut you off the second it looks like you're making headway. So that's why again, and I know it's so hard because you gotta fucking survive. So I'm not gonna say I'm not saying everybody quit immediately, but the more sovereignty, economic, and this is why I'm saying this, because the Bolivians, the Vietnamese, and the Chinese and the Cubans, they understand international sanctions, high frequency trading, and the importance of the U.S. world reserve currency internationally, and why it's important to have a yuan and Bolivian indigenous currency, Bolivian currency exchange directly into yuan is actually very important for them, and Venezuelan into Iranian currency, right? They understand high finance, because if they don't, because that's where that's the number one weapon of empires. They cut your funding off. Oh, are you actually liberating yourself? Well, there went all of your grants. Now we're going to give it to a better Oreo or an Apple or some sellout Wendigo. So that's why you got to watch out for that. But that was something they're talking about. How are we going to get the funding for this? Well, and so that's a question of modern economics, it's not just about feeling good and, oh, I sung to my ancestors and I talked to the trees and now I feel good and now I can be an indigenous. To be indigenous in 2022 means figuring out how to build economic sovereignty so that you can continue to do the work that you were doing to liberate when it gets actually close to succeeding. Because that's something that's part of being, for a native Hawaiian being a Kanaka, is you want to actually, that's what the Hawaiians were thinking about 1850. The Hawaiians in 1850 were going, well, let's be an American colony and do a little hula and feel good about that while we be American. That's not what Kalakaua and Emma, the inventor of universal healthcare, were thinking. They're going, how are we going to maintain economically and sustainably? Where are we going to get the investment in? How do we make sure we don't get hooks in that the British or American banks can manipulate us into stopping our liberation movement and maintaining our independence? How are we going to maintain our economic, social, cultural, and political sovereignty? So those are important questions that are part of imagining the indigenous future, right? Like, okay, we're going to take the AI-powered soda bottles and we're going to use that to buy more technology exchanges based on non-debt trap, non-colonial Chinese loans and transfers to help us manufacture more lithium plants. And it's going to damage a lot of the ecology. We don't want to do that. So we have to make sure we have some of that money that's coming from the excess revenue from the AI-powered bottling plants and AI-powered electric vehicle manufactured by indigenous Bolivian technologists has to go back into environmental restoration after we do the lithium mining. And that is all stuff that is indigenous stuff. The colonizers be like, oh yeah, mine the shit out of that, let it fall apart. Just cut all the trees down and then there's no trees. Who cares? I got mine, motherfucker. Right? Canada almost had no maple trees in 1990 because they were cutting all of them down to get. There's no sandalwood trees, because the colonizers said, "Oh, I like that. Cut it all down and sell it off." There's a lot of things are extinct now because, right? But indigenous people don't do that, but they still have to operate in economies with high-speed internet, electricity, and everything else, while also balancing that with the needs of nature. And so that all of that that's a very important theme, which is that indigeneity is also, like I've brought, this is a point I make a lot, but again, indigeneity is not dancing in a mud hut. It's not just singing to your ancestors. It's not to say we shouldn't. It's not riding on a whale, talking to the tree and singing to grandma and seeing somebody in a feather headdress riding in a spirit form across a plain. Because number one, most indigenous people of Turtle Island are not Plains Indians, but that's what white people want to see us perform. Or in Hawaii, you want to see us perform like grass skirt, fake hula. That's not even real. So indigeneity is more than that. It includes having ecologically sustainable ways as part, but that's not the sum. That is not the sum total of it. That's not who we have been. That's not who we are. That's not who we will be. Or you gotta go tell Luna Oi that she's a fake indigenous person, and then you're gonna get decolonized, probably with a tank. You should be really scared of tanks. Be really scared. The West hates tanks. You know why? Because the Soviet tanks Soviet and Chinese tanks beat the shit out of colonizers routinely, like the PT-76 tanks used to remove the Americans from Vietnam. committing genocidal war to prevent the spread of healed civilization. So you should be afraid of tanks if you're a shitty piece of shit garbage capitalist colonizer, or you work for the empire. You should be afraid of some Russian tank. You should be afraid of them. Anyways, so the parentless native. Although that's another thing. You know, sometimes you might need some. Ideally, you don't want to commit violence, also, but you know, sometimes you might need some of those. The parentless native children. Anyway, so back to I'm like way off my topic. It's okay. I gotta wrap this up. So colonizers have no families because everyone is an abused trophy. So, parentless native children raised by TV and games force a code switch between white and brown worlds that we don't fully belong in, and cope with humor to help cushion the trauma in comedy, cyberpunk games, wacky pirate shows, and Michael Jackson Haka. Watch Our Flag Means Death. You probably have if you're watching the stream. This is from Boy. There's a Michael Jackson Thriller crossover with the indigenous Maoris Haka. It's the famous dance that Jason Momoa actually did auditioning for Game of Thrones. And but it is a Maori intimidation dance that is very it leaves a strong impression, and but it's joined in the Haka in this comedic part of Boy. And so the severing of family and the lost native children struggling to deal is the core theme of also Neofeud, my video game. That the blow is softened by the silly hippie Terminators, Bruce Willis wannabe social workers, and the influencer Princess Leia's, like totally from Orange County 90210 and other satire. And the reason why is because anyway, so when I talk about like Neofeud is a game that deals with what Taika's experiences, but a little more head on in a lot of times. This is a scene where you are literally, and again, it's science fiction, so there's robots and there's sentient machines, but they're marginalized people, and you are tasked with taking the children from the parents of indigenous people. Basically, you are charged with the severing to drive to really, and with the police, with your government in a blue state, you are tasked with continuing the breaking of the connection. You know, you're tasked with the severing of the umbilical from the past of indigenous healed civilizations to the future to prevent the spread of communism or indigeneity, to prevent, you know, and so that's ultimately what is actually happening here. But it's, you know, and then it's like, this is the one that makes people a lot of people have said like they've like cried like for 3 days and they're like just throwing up. It's super hard. It's the only scene that is like that real. I would say, like, there's other scenes that are pretty intense, but there's only scene like where you're literally filling out the CPS form to decide whether the family will have their children stolen. And it's by the book. It's actually, you know, the thing is, it's this scene, I made it like as real as possible. So literally that's, excuse me, ma'am, do you have a weapon? Or sir, is there a weapon in the house? Or do you have a weapon on your person? No. You know, and it's very matter of fact. They're just like, well, I'm going to put my hand, ma'am, I'm going to place my hands on the child, and the child is going to be coming with me. So please do not fight, do not struggle. These are literally what the police and the social workers will do in that process. I watched like a lot of video, and I've like, unfortunately, there's a whole book. There's a really good video I recommend you check out. It's called Transracial. It's a book on transracial. It's a video on YouTube on transracial adoption, which is not specifically indigenous, but it's about the system of CPS and transracial adoption, and the social work system and the CPS, which targets specific in the colonizer world, which targets specifically non-white and especially indigenous children. In Hawaii, Native Hawaiians are grossly overrepresented. Indigenous children hugely overrepresented in the children who are stolen, kidnapped from the parents, and then given off to white families, which is an abusive system. So this video is called "Raised by Colonizers." It's very long. It's like 7 some hours something, but it's by a black person who was adopted by a white family and was also in that way severed from her own culture. And it goes, a lot of this goes into, and Professor Flowers, of course, is Lua, is is black and Chinese. So it's actually Asian and African of heritage, but is adopted. And so if you want to learn more about that specifically, that's a documentary that goes into a lot of that stuff. But so my point is that so Neofeud is a game that is dealing with the player character is asked to do a CPS examination of a robot family. So they have a government issue checklist to fill out, access to clean water. They don't have. By the way, this is one thing that will happen, right? So the main character, as I said, is performing CPS. He's a social worker for the state, and they ask, "Do you have access to clean water?" Yeah, you have to inspect. Is there any dirt, or is it an unhealthy environment for the child? Right? And so this is a cyberpunk science fiction game, so it's robots instead of humans that are marginalized, but it's basically the same checklist. They don't have it because, well, now in the real world, they might have the family might not have clean water because the pipes are bad, like in Flint, right? Or a lot of black and brown and impoverished communities. It's not really the tenants' fault that they don't have access to clean water, right? It's the U.S. military's fault that there's jet fuel in all of our water. But that would be a premise. There is toxic water coming out of your pipe, Hawaiian family. So as your white CPS inspector, you would steal the Hawaiian child because there's F-22 U.S. military jet fuel coming out of the pipe. That would be a legitimate grounds to steal children. I mean, I don't know if you know the United States, but have you seen how their court and their judicial and everything works? The whole thing is just to justify racialized capitalism. I don't know if you noticed. So that is a legitimate justification, and it works. This is how they steal children all the time. Millions of them. Millions and millions. The kids that I work with, so many Hawaiian foster kids severed from their culture. Hawaiian foster kid with white mom, I seen that I can name off of the top of my head. Like there's like Kainoa, there's Kanaka, there's Damien, and like all these Hawaiian kids, white mom, foster kids, countless coming into my programs. I'm like, and I was mostly on the education, the teaching end of like trying to act. I'm mostly doing the actual services work, like trying to help kids in the get their degrees. It's basically like teaching like high school for dropouts, But I'm like, where are all these kids Hawaiian with white moms? Well, it's like I didn't know all the stuff that I know now. Like at the time, I was just like, oh, that's weird. How come there's all these like Hawaiian kids, white mom? It's because the court will say, oh, you are living in a falling apart house in Palolo Valley. You're feeling in a dirty area. You have. Oh, look at that. There was an exposed knife on the table. Well, we're running out of space. We got a fucking 1-bedroom apartment with 3 families living in it. Or like a 2-bedroom with 3 families. People sleeping on a couch. There's not enough space in this apartment for a sanitary, healthy life. Oh, there's some bugs. Oh, children are coming with me. Bye-bye, children. No more Native Hawaiian mommy and daddy. That's just that. Or no more Native Indigenous mommy and daddy. No more black mommy and daddy. No more whatever. Now you're going up for adoption, or now you're just going to be a hamster for the pharmaceutical companies to test out ADHD drugs. Maybe the kid is acting out because you just ripped the kid away from the mom and you did this horrible trauma. Oh no. Now they're depressed. Let's give them antidepressants. Oh no. The pharmaceutical companies use indigenous black and brown children to test their drugs on. The French came out and said that to Africa, to the African WHO head, and they said, we're going to test COVID-19 on African children. They literally said it out loud. I don't know the fuck they said that out loud. Black and brown children are the number one vessel to test your poisons on, or to test unknown, possibly dangerous substances on. That's what adopted children. That's a very important industry for pharmaceuticals. It's elucidated in this documentary that's covered. I think it comes up. The documentary is, I can't remember the fucking name of it, but it comes up in that video that I just told you about. So anyway, but Neofeud, no, it's a cyberpunk video game, so it's not like, oh well, you're in poverty because we've disenfranchised, stolen your land, your people, put you all in a ghetto, and then blamed you for it and said it's brown on brown crime. And that's why you're all poor, because you just like going to prison, like Taika Waititi's dad. So now you're all going to prison, and all your children are coming with me. Because there's a little too much trash on the floor. Because there's 10 people living in a house that's only fit for 3. because what? The U.S. military, there's lead in your pipe. Well, the landlord didn't want to fix it. Well, that's not my problem. Your children are coming with me. You are an abusive parent, and according to 35, the Child Protective Services subsection C, Article 2, your children are living in an unhealthy environment. Because your children are living in an unhealthy environment, but it's not my fault. I'm just trying my best. I'm working 3 jobs at Jiffy Lube. That is not my concern. Officer, please take the child. Please restrain this abusive woman and this violent father. Put the father in prison. Put Taika's dad in prison. This woman is an abusive, unfit parent, and now this Native Hawaiian, this Native Maori, this Native child, this black and brown child is coming with us to a healthy environment where they'll be used to test pharmaceuticals or possibly abused and get killed, like happened to some actual of my friends. Like Lost Sue asked some of our indigenous relatives what happened in the 60s scoop. In Canada, the Sweden of North America, in that it has good PR, but it's still a capitalist colonial shithole. But in Neofeud, it's, well, maybe they just reconfigured the tap to spout Valvoline oil because they're robots. I mean, we don't need water. We're going to all rust away if we got water. I don't care. That's not my problem. The entire system is set up to steal your, well, they don't say it, but this is what they mean. I don't care that this is a tiny little quibble that we have caused and created because we've impoverished and disenfranchised you all and stolen your land and made all the money with our capitalist colonizer ways, and we want more of your land, so we're going to take more of you to drill underneath your Anishinaabe feet and rip out your ancestors' homes and build luxury condos on Koloa. I don't care that this is an unjust law and doing the right thing would be illegal, which would mean me not taking your children, but that would be legally because there's no justice system in the West. But I don't care. My job is to take 30 kids this month. If I don't take 30 kids this month, I don't make $120,000 to pay my mortgage. And if I don't pay my mortgage, my wife and my children will be homeless. And I can't have that happen. So you, Hawaiian, Maori, black, brown child, you're losing your children because I'm also a cog in the capitalist, colonialist, racist machine. And I'm doing the stormtroopers' work with a clipboard and a CPS name tag. And that's a major point in Neofeud, because you play the guy who is like, if he doesn't fuck this family over by ripping this indigenous family apart, his family will be out on the street. And that's, and in the end, he realizes, if I do or if I don't, you can't be a superhero. If I don't take this if I don't rip this child away from this native people's arms, from this impoverished, abused people's arms, who actually love their child. That's a very important point. The white rich families, they fucking hate their children. They actually try to kill their children. They give them millions of dollars, but they don't fucking spend any time. They don't care. The children are all trophies for the colonizer. Princess Sybil's character. A lot of the other children, they're abused. The children who actually have impoverished but still loving families, like my parents also have been routinely fucked their entire life. The families that are actually still have some kind of thread of indigenous healedness in them, those are the most important to shatter to pieces. And you have to go every day. If you do that, day. If you be a CPS worker, if you be a cop, day in, day out, and just break people, just rip dads away, just fucking let all the kids get killed every day in and day out, eventually it will hollow you out, and then you just become a shell. And then, America, the West isn't dead, but they're all dead inside. You're just an imperial fucking arms dealer shell. What kind of soul? What kind of life is that? There's like a line in Prey, the 2006 game, where it actually uses indigenous teachings. I did a whole video about it, and the grandfather says, the kid says, "Fuck, Grandpa, I don't give a shit about Cherokee." He's gone into the U.S. military. He's a Cherokee guy who goes into the U.S. military and comes back and he says, "I hate this reservation. It's just poor. There's nothing to do. It's boring. I hate I hate the Cherokee culture. It's just superstitious bullshit." And the grandpa says, you don't mean that. Like, if there is anything better in this life than knowing one's people and one's land and understand and being connected to one's heritage and culture, I do not know it. And it's like, right? And the son is like, no, there's better things in California. There's better things in New York. There's better things with money and fame and power. There's better things in America. America is the greatest. It is the light on the hill. I could have 57 flavors of ketchup, 25 Whoppers, and my own personal a bathtub with Snoop Dogg and Taylor Swift in it. I could have all these things. That is so much better than whatever bullshit is on this broke, alcohol-filled, run-down house, Taika Waititi's house-filled shitty reservation. And grandpa's like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. Like, you will regret what you're saying, but you don't realize that till you're selling Tomahawk missiles in a bathtub with Taylor Swift, Snoop Dogg. You figure out you don't actually like any of these assholes. And all of the fanciest food, all of the 4-star Iron Chef Morimoto fucking squid ink pasta, all the French Latin fusion cubed amuse-bouche fucking soup, and all the snails and escargots you can eat that don't even taste that good because white people food is disgusting. You find it's all shallow and hollow as that tacky, as that shallow presentation on those tasteless cubes and tasteless turkey that you're eating at Thanksgiving with your white wife. And then you go, why did I do this? Why did I why did I progress and maintain my, why did I double down and persist and elongate the severedness away from my culture that the United States ripped me apart from? Why did I continue the distance between myself? Why did I further that? Which is also important, anyway, so robots don't need clean water, so what do you put down? Do they have safety hazards? There's a smelting furnace with hot liquid metal in the kitchen where dad's smelting Coke cans and aluminum bikes to cast replacement cyberarm parts because they can't afford refurb care. So this is the part where you get to fill out this form and steal the children. And so this happens. Anyway, so the following is military SWAT police come in and do, so the police come in and kill a bunch of innocent people. So Neofeud does get very real, it's a little bit more real than Boy gets. Boy is incredibly sad, but Neofeud gets a bit more, I think. But that scene is surrounded by all the comedy because that one is because it is so intense. They can't tell the story, and the thing is, but the thing for me is also, as I often bring up, I have a kuleana to tell the story because the kids who did have it worse, the kids who did have it worse in the ghettos of Kalihi-Palama and in Palolo and in Waianae, right? They didn't have any parent. They didn't have anybody. I mean, not even absent parents, not even latchkey parents. They had nothing. They had a side of the road to sleep on. And then they woke up and then they tried to not get stabbed in the night. They had no home at all, nothing, nowhere. From birth, from 3, from 6, and then they went to prison, and now they're never going to be heard from again. Those and then there's people that are even that are just not even in Imperial Metropole. That it's an even worse story than that. And those kids who were killed by the U.S. police, those kids who were stolen by these systems, they can't tell their story because they're dead or they're in prison forever. So I have to keep telling the story. And so, but I can't tell the story. Anyway, I should probably stop. This is probably too much for a lot of people, but I'm gonna just reel this back. But if you want this entire thread, I go over this thread all the time. But this is a thread about how Neofeud is actually about the experiences and the people that I worked with in Hawaii as a Native Hawaiian. And so, but anyway, it's 2:00 almost. I gotta get off. So, where's my thread? I lost my thread. It's at the very top. So, Taika's kind of bring this back to home. So the experiences of the familylessness, and the severing of the umbilical is a lot of what makes my work what it is. It is my life. It's watching it happen. It's understanding what happened to my parents. Finally. Better. I'm never going to perfectly understand it, but I understand it better. That generation, right? And it's that same thing that that is what is not said in this interview Part of me was reading this interview, and I like everything that was said. And I'm not saying that the interview is false. Obviously, it talks about lots of things, but there's a side of it that is missing from the Taika interview. There's a lens into what he is talking about and saying that is missed in the way it's described, right? When they're talking about, for example, when they're talking about the family, it's kind of like the thing that irks me, I think, is when they talk about things like, when they talk about his dad, dad's, he had a motorcycle gang, saving slaves, and then he spent time in and out of prison. He farmed, wrote poetry, and painted. He made landscapes and portraits, but also idealized images of Native Americans. Taika, and then the dad and mom met in prison, and it's a story. Oh, how great that they met, and now it's so nice, and it's like, it's so sad that dad was in prison, but it's like, why was the dad in prison? Why was Taika Waititi's dad in prison? What was? It's not just like, oh, they just like going to prison. Oh, those Hawaiian Samoans, the black people, they just like going to prison for some reason. There are entire university degrees that are had writing essays about why black people love slavery, and they're just genetically predisposed to it. They are black on black crime is just genetically part of their nature. Blaming the colonized for their colonization, right? And that's something that's like, it irks me when I kind of see this kind of stuff where it's like, oh, and look at this, oh, it's like those puff pieces in the New York Times. Oh, look at this, or CNN. Oh, look at this starving black child that invented a cure for pneumonia while homeless in New York City. Why the fuck was there a black homeless child in New York City? Why were there any homeless children at all? Why are there so many non-white homeless children? This is not celebrate. This is, oh my God, it's disgusting what people like the CEO of your news organization have done to these people. Oh, look at this cute little Maori person, just like in a motorcycle gang, being a non-present father, going to prison for years. Oh, look at how cool that is that experience happened. Look at how fucked up you, white lady from San Francisco, writing this article, and your entire colonizer world. What have you done to Taika's dad and his dad's dad and dad's mom and all of them? That's not cute. This is not inspiring. You're talking about this like this is some like alien reality, and when you come in and you're looking at it, this is the way it always is. Oh, look at this experience that was had. How nice for them. Yes. No, fucker, you're the one doing it. That's what irritates me, is like this kind of like this passive, like David Attenborough looking at the deer voice. Oh, look at this in the natural environment. Look at the wild Taika. Look at the wild Maori going to prison, right? Not having fathers in his natural Maori environment. Look at them frolic around, playing with the wood, playing with driftwood and kelp, in it, just being lost and watching mommy die at a young age in the natural environment. This is not the natural environment. This is not the natural Maori environment. That's what, look at the Hawaiian just struggling, and look how, oh, good job, you struggled out. Thank God that we had our social services for you and our at-risk youth program to help you out of your environment that you put yourself in your, that's what fucking pisses me off. Because as somebody who's lived there, from there, worked with people from there, worked in trying to help these kids, right? This fucking like patting myself on the back. You should be, this article should be called, "Me and all of my Western colonizers completely fucked Taika Waititi and his people and his culture. I'm so sorry. It's amazing that he makes great movies." That's what you should call every article about him. Not, Taika, stop talking about sensitive issues dealing with race and colonialism because it's difficult for Hollywood and the military industrial complex and the big capitalism that funds Hollywood and all cinema and all games. It's, oh, how cute that there's look how progressive we are because we got a brown guy making Thor. No, it should be, we are fucking terrible ass people. Why was Taika's dad in prison? Why was his mom struggling in poverty? Why is that cute? That's not fucking cute, New Zealand. Why are all these people struggling in your rich ass country? Peter Jackson, makers of Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies, makers of all these fucking Hollywood antipodon Hollywood. Why are all these people struggling down there? That's not cute. The article should start, we have committed horrible atrocity, genocide, and we should repatriate trillions of dollars to the Maori. It's amazing that they're still making any movies of any quality, surviving. It's amazing Taika is alive. That's how you should start your articles. Not, oh, look at this quirky little child dealing with trauma that we definitely didn't cause by just being all over the place and just making all these jokes about incredibly sad personal experiences. It's so interesting that he has all these sad personal experiences, that he has to barely survive and keep any spoons by just making jokes all the time and just being a silly guy running around pretending to be in the trenches on the set of Thor Ragnarok. Oh, look how quirky and funny that little brown kid is. Oh, look how funny. Fuck you, man. You should open it with, we owe the Maori everything. Thank God a brown guy saved our shitty Aryan superheroes franchise that was boring as fuck. Because Thor is a story about a rich, white, varsity jacket wearing kid. It's a story about Superman. It's a story about a guy who's going to inherit billions in the shape of a hammer. He's going to rule Asgard, whether white, blonde hair, blue-eyed, rich daddy wants it, or whether he fucks up or not, basically. It's a boring-ass story, and it sucks, and they underutilized Natalie Portman, and Taika saved it because indigenous people have actual struggles that white people like to co-opt and live inside, like Star Wars, but then bury all the Vietnamese that it's apparently based on. Like The Last Samurai, which is about a white guy pretending to be an Asian person. Like all these movies, like Avatar, where a white guy out indigenous people resist a Western military. A white guy out guerrilla warfare's indigenous guerrilla warriors. Because indigenous and non-white struggles are the actually interesting, actually meaningful struggles that white people have to co-opt and pretend to live inside and then erase all the people that they stole from. And Taika is just like doing that for Thor without a lot of thanks. And I'm sure that he's not going to be happy that I said all this because he might want to make more movies. But at the same time, it's also like, that's the part. I mean, again, I'm saying all that. I'm not saying the article sucks. I'm just saying like that part where it's this kind of passive voice, this liberal passive. We definitely did nothing. I have no response. You know, it's like Biden going, "Hey, somebody should stop these cops from shooting people." It's like Biden going, "Hey, there should be like more affordable rent. Somebody should do something about this." Like, motherfucker, you're the goddamn president. Why are we always at all these wars? Motherfucker, you're the goddamn president sending all the goddamn $40 billion to continue infinite war and get every Ukrainian killed for military industrial complex profits and to break up to stop the spread of indigeneity and to stop the spread of communism and to stop cooperation across the planet. Well, somebody should do something about this. I hate that fucking voice because my dad talks in that voice. Like, Dad, you are Hawaii. You should feel something. No, I'm not. I'm just a passive liberal consumer of my own culture. Anyway, so yeah, that's a kind of weird place to end. I know, but we have to end. Oh yeah, before I go though, so I just want to show what I said because I didn't touch on it, but I just want to show Princess Sybil. Holly actually plays Princess Sybil. I wonder if there's a Princess Sybil. I wonder if you can get it when you Google it. No, you can't get it. Oh no, there it is. But Princess, there's a line in Neofeud. Let me see if I have that in the script actually. Where she's a multi-trillionaire descendant of the Clinton-Bush Empire, a multi-billion-dollar. This was the original version of Princess Sybil. That's oh yeah, Holly actually painted the original portrait of this as well. So I should probably shout out to Hollywood. We were first working on it. That was the first Princess Sybil. I can't believe that that's still up there. But anyways, the rest of the dress and everything else I threw in there, and I did a bunch of these other ones. But in Neofeud, the character of the Princess Sybil character, she is the descendant of a multi-planetary conglomerate, the Clinton-Bush Empire, that are a solar system faring multi-quintillionaire family. The dad runs the CIA, the NSA. He bought the entire dying United States for pennies on the dollar for like $3 trillion. That's how much the U.S. was worth at the end of the wildfire epidemics and economic world reserve currency collapse. And the Clinton Bush family's richest family in the solar system, the kind of inheritor of the neo-feudal post-capitalist hellscape of annihilated Earth with a handful of levitating palaces at Versailles above endless landfill shantyscape, like the worst Brazilian favela crossed with a nuclear annihilated Taiwan, crossed with like a Mumbai, dark city, the dark shadow cities, I should say. So this Princess Sybil's character is very economically well-to-do. This character, but at the same time, trying to get this on the screen. So Princess Sybil's character is incredibly well-to-do, but at the same time, she is also parentless. That's kind of my point, right? The people, that millions and billions of people on Earth, like the Silicas, have had their families stripped away and broken and destroyed to build the wealth of Princess Sybil's multi-quintillion quadrillionaire family that, lassoed a golden comet to stop the world reserve currency from shifting away the power by backing everything in gold-backed rubles and gold-backed yuan. And he lassos a comet and nukes everyone and basically says, now the U.S. is back on top over the ashes of the former Earth. The richest man, all the richest families, they form one group, blow up the Global Belt and Road Initiative, initiate possibly nuclear warfare. There's a global warfare, and rule over its ashes. And they are amazing. They have literally all the resources and all the money and everything in the solar system. But they still don't have families. They themselves are severed. And I'm going to try to get that line because actually it actually relates directly to what I'm saying. The white mother who rips the indigenous child away from the black mother or the brown mother also doesn't have a family. And this was kind of elucidated. It's like, in that video, it was like, I as an adopted child, as a transracial adopted child, I was never really treated like a person. I was always like a trophy to mommy. I was whatever mommy wanted me to be. Mommy said, don't go in ballet because that's embarrassing, so I didn't. Mommy said, do this, and mommy was only thinking of me trotting out the black child to show how a good Christian she was and then putting me back in the closet when it was embarrassing to have a black child. I was only ever there as a award, a badge, a party favor, a talking point for mommy at mommy's Bible book club. I didn't exist as a person. I was just, there are no white families when you really have a really white place. Under colonial capitalism, is another thing that was said. Under a colonial capitalist structure in which people put their children through an abusive school to turn out a cog, that all is child abuse, and that itself breaks children. There is no non-abusive way to raise children in a capitalist colonialist world. I made that point like last year a lot, but I feel like it's a point that people are coming back to. There is no way to do that, and you can do better than other people, but there is no non-abusive way to parent and to educate children at home, in school, in sports. There is no way to do it. And that's why another reason why we have to end the capitalist. And when you raise a child, but the further in, that's why I say a lot of schools, unfortunately, are abuse systems to churn out capitalist cogs who are good at taking orders and being yelled and talked down to and abused, and treated as objects, as cogs in a machine, because they will become a cog in a Walmart, in a Starbucks, in a Raytheon machine when they grow up, taking orders in a dictatorial capitalist workplace with a boss who is unquestioned and non-democratically elected for the benefit of the profit-making capitalist owners. So Princess Sybil's character is where is that script? Yeah, so there's this line where she talks specifically about all these children beneath me don't have any families because they're in poverty, their parents don't have the resources, and they're being taken by CPS. That my ruling elite family controls and rips the indigenous children away so that they can maintain capitalism, right? And so there's a line where Sybil says, yeah, I wanted to believe that I have a father, but I never really had a family. Like, let's see, shoot, the robot raised by. Shoot, I'm trying to find the exact line. Yeah, like the daughter, the daughter is like, I was raised by robots. I didn't ever see my dad. I was on this luxury floating yacht full of, bot nannies, going through ballet practice in the orbital sky city because Earth is all irradiated and fucked up and broken. And then I was going through, all these fancy events. My dad was never there. My mom was never there. And my dad only ever wanted me to be a little token piece. When I started saying things he didn't like maybe we should help the impoverished people of Earth, because Princess Sybil was kind of like a do-gooder. She's like a billionaire, trillionaire, wannabe socialist hippie princess. Like, I'm all about the sharing economy, not really understanding what that means, right? She's like the unknowingly imperialist vegan tuber from a multi-millionaire Toronto stock trader family, trying to do the right thing, but not really sure how to do it. Like the really rich white lady that's like trying to help people, like really rich white millennial or Gen Z person trying to do something, but not sure how to do it, and whose own parents are estranged them and don't really care about them, only see them as, well, if you get into a good school like Harvard, that will look good on me. And, oh, son, daughter, have you done well? We'll go back to boarding school, and if you've done well, I'll know about that. I don't want to talk to you. I'm too busy cheating on your mom with a supermodel. So I don't have time for you. I got to go back to stock trading at New York. I got to go back to selling weapons in DC. I don't have time to be a father or be a mother for you. Right? Because I'm too busy getting mine. And being a parent is difficult, is time consuming, and changing diapers sucks. And I want to get sleep. So that's why I didn't ever see you when you were born, because infants are hard. And raising children is difficult sometimes. And I don't want that. So I'm going to pay someone else to raise you, and you can fuck off. So that's, so that's why, and like, that's because I've been around billionaires as well, unfortunately. And not just billionaires, millionaires, and just people who are temporarily embarrassed millionaires see their children that way. The Western way is to see your children, to see other people's children as things that need to starve, like in Sweden, but to see your own children as potential aggrandizement for yourself, right? Even when you talk about, well, I want my dynasty to live for 1,000 years. The dynasty that you want to live as a Western feudalist or capitalist or colonialist, the McDonald's dynasty, the Disney dynasty, is not really about those children and the world they'll live in. It's about aggrandizing you with statues of yourself, with the sexes and the accolades and the prestige and the universities and all of the great things that your children have done to aggrandize you. And so that's where, and so that's the other side of the colonial capitalist reality, which is that the indigenous children who represent a possible socialist communist future are ripped away from the parents, but also the colonizers rip themselves apart by re-traumatizing themselves and their children by living in such a broken and maintaining such a broken system, despite all the wealth and the resource. And I see this again and again. This is the experience of so many children in like the wealthy parts of Hawaii. Kahala, they're just like also kind of left to themselves in a different way. But that's kind of why I said, that's I know this. Yeah, that's what I meant when I was saying that the how the familylessness of colonialism severs the umbilical of indigenous, but also the colonizer. And just living under capitalism, you get abused by your capitalist boss, and often you come home and you take that out on your spouse, and you don't have time for your children because you're too busy trying to make all of the capitalist dollars to pay for your rent and material conditions, too much so, and that also hinders your ability. Like my mom wishes she could have spent more time with us. My mom gave birth and then went straight back to work. She really regretted it with my sister, but she was told you have to be an 80s capitalist. You have to get the shoulder pads and be an 80s woman, mom and worker. You gotta be a boss babe and a CEO climbing that ladder in the white man's world in the corporate office. my mom like ate that up and like stressed herself out. She was also had curly hair and she was dark, and so that was a lot harder because she looked like a black person and she had to try to straighten herself and small in herself. She's always terrified she's gonna be too heavy. It's like, Mom, you're not even where. But she's like literally just like she's like post-traumatic diet world, white beauty standards disorder. But all of that together meant she couldn't be as much the mom that she wanted to be. Also, that's another way that a capitalist colonial system also stops parents from being real parents. Anyways, I could go on this shit forever, so let's stop. But long story short, watch all the Taika movies. Watch, Neofeud is a video game that I just talked about, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But it is a game that is not on sale. It does support everything we do here. It is a game about the capitalist, colonialist, and imperialist and racist structures, like I was just speaking about. It is a satirical cyber. It's a lot funnier than this stream was. I meant this stream to be more funny, but it wasn't as funny as I wanted it to be. I might be working on some art though later on today, so we're gonna see. I'm gonna try to be more chill in the later Twitch stream. But Neofeud is a game that does support everything we do here. Consider checking it out, wishlisting it. It is like Disco Elysium, but more cyberpunk. It is like Detroit Become Human, but not made by a giant AAA capitalist company with a white guy pretending to know about the civil rights movement and experience of black people. Neofeud is a game by a marginalized Native Hawaiian person that, like myself, that is a leftist that is working for a non-capitalist worker cooperative of myself and Holly Argent and Positive Synergy as best as we can manage under the circumstances here in illegally occupied Hawaii. And if you would like to support that, consider picking the game up, leaving even a very short review because it does increase the likelihood that the game will be discovered in the Silver Spook, in the algorithm of Steam. You can also find Neofeud on Steam. On itch for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It is a game that is also on sale there, and you can get it DRM free, and you can give the maximum revenue to the creators when you buy the game on itch. Also, you can check out things like Decolonators. Decolonators is a game that is also on itch, and it is a game that's on it's $3. It is made by a less severed, more together indigenous countries communist educator, Luna Oi, and the country is Vietnam. Decolonators is a game about kicking capitalist colonizer butts out of Vietnam in retro arcade game glory. I may be working on a second Decolonators, by the way. I'm working on a prototype. I'm not sure what it is yet, but it might be it's something that I'm working on as part of Neofeud. It's going to be set in the world of Neofeud too, but it's going to be at present Decolonators like. It might be Decolonators too. We're going to see. But you're going to blow away colonizers and imperialist assholes as an indigenous person. So, in that sense, it's going to be very similar. So, look out for that. And while you wait, you can play this one. Also, you can also pick up Woman, which is free. And also, you can get Woman and throw some money our way. Woman is a book by my partner, Holly, who is a woman raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is not a historical retelling, but it is a irreverent critique of conservative Christianity from the in a fictional book from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. So if that sounds interesting, check it out over there. Also, you can look at things like what else we got. That's it. Oh yeah, we got lots of other stuff. I write books. I was at a children's literature convention yesterday, and I write books. They're not really children's literature. But short story collection, Terminus Machina stories, and I also make a lot of music. But anyways, you can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud. I just had a big Patreon update. So if you want to see what that's about, I talk about lots of things, including the Okinawan sweet potato that we're growing here. Speaking of brainy sweetgrass. Along with Hawaiian kalo, Okinawan sweet potato, orange trees, all kinds of stuff. So if you want to check that out, along with other Neofeud 2 updates and other updates related to Silver Spook activities, as well as get access to the Silver Spook Discord, and also just support us here doing land back, education, decolonization, anti-capitalist action, and making games and doing panels and all that kind of fun stuff, consider becoming a Silver Spook patron. Consider how much is the Silver Spook streams worth to you. Is it worth anything? $1, $5, $3 a month? How much can you afford consider that, and then see if you can help us out. Anyways, it does every bit does help us to go a long way to keep the lights on, electricity, cars running, and the house up, all that kind of stuff. You can also follow Silverspook Games at Octodon.social on Mastodon, a decentralized, non-capitalist, federated, open source social media platform like Twitter, but without billionaires and Wall Street and Silicon Valley bigwigs deciding what you see and what you don't see. Also, you can follow at Silverspook Games at Mastodon for the games-related stuff. And you can also follow, while we have access to the Death Star satellites, Silverspook Guy for my personal takes on stuff. At Silverspook Guy is where you can follow for things like when I go live and things like, oh yeah, by the way, since we're here, remember, in case you missed it, we are going to do a Hawaiian and Luchuan or Okinawan people Yuntaku, which is a Luchuan word or Okinawan word that means talking, just generally it's like talking story. Talk story I think is like a local pidgin word in Hawaii, but it just means having a conversation with no specific topic, or hui, which is a meeting coming together. And also we're going to be talking about language, culture, and more tomorrow at 4 Pacific. With somebody who does, these people are 2 people that also do language preservation and reclamation and education, so that's really cool. You can also follow Silverspook Games for the games-related stuff like Neofeud 2, Terminus Machina, and other games, and when the games go on sale, and updates to the games and stuff like that. So consider following Silverspook Games. Also, if you want to follow specifically Terminus Cyberstar, Terminus Cyberstar is a cyberpunk RPG like in the vein of Deus Ex and System Shock 2, and it is a game that is currently finished development of the first the finished development of basically the game, the first instance of the game, and there might be sequels, and they're now moving on to art optimization and content testing. So this is also a game that deals directly with colonialism by dunking on colonialism, and also it's a game that deals directly with the sort of topics that I address often on these streams. I'm the lead content director and writer of this game. So if that sounds interesting to you, consider checking out Terminus Cyberstar on Twitter. Join the Discord over there. And also, you can consider following a Positive Synergy, _1983, who is another native Hawaiian who's doing very important actions, such as saving Kaloa, which is a place where our important sacred sites are being desecrated by capitalist developments of colonizers, shutting down Red Hill. Of course, the U.S. military continues to poison our water. Please don't fly to Hawaii because we're going to run out of water if everyone comes to Hawaii this summer. So please cancel that vacation if you've made it, okay? Protect Mauna Kea and return Ka'awaloa to its rightful name from Captain Cook's colonizer name. And Positive Synergy also... hey, yeah, what's up, Kama? So do check out Positive Synergy's work, and Positive Synergy is also... Positive Synergy is working on music right now. Positive Synergy is working on music right now. I can hear the music going on. So this new music coming soon. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be really great. But while you wait for Positive Synergy's new song, you should check out Perfecting Perfection, the first chapter, where Positive Synergy talks about all these important topics, such as land back, being a good comrade in a world of capitalism and colonialism, and other things related to his experiences as a Native Hawaiian through these awesome songs with really great lyrics and really great messages. Check this album out. Buy it for your comrades and friends, and tell everybody about this. Positive Synergy is also, as I said, a member of the Silverspook Hui, and our brother here, and he's like literally right on the same quarter acre, so we're right there. But so please support Positive Synergy, and you also support Silverspook, all of us here, when you do that as well. And also, let's see, Holly is also my partner, and Holly is has a new avatar. Very cool, lots of really cool colors there, and nice glasses. I was like, "Do you have a mohawk? When did you get a mohawk?" But I think it's the color is something about the angle. I was like, "Is that a mohawk?" I'm like, I mean, Holly can do whatever Holly wants, because that's one of the things about conservative Christianity is like, you have to look exactly the way your man wants. But I was like, go do what. That's my indigeneity coming through, because I didn't know all of my language, but I'm like, go do whatever I don't care. I'm gonna tell you how to make your hair. You go do your hair, whatever you want. Anyways, so Anyway, I'm not. This is not a self-congratulations time. Mod and VA and partner. Holly is the mod and the VA and partner of myself, and a partner in having the children in marriage, and also in the Silver Spook Cooperative Business, which has no capitalist bosses. Producer and writer for Zion Attack, also known as Kate Nix, who is going to be. Holly is currently very deep into making the show. Next season's Lullaby Lounge, and fun fact: Kate Nix also voices the nasty capitalist colonizer, Miss Thatcher in Decolonators. So that's where that voice comes from. And also, Magic Storytime is a Twitch live stream show, storytelling, magic making, and Holly is the mod for that. And Holly also is the primary caregiver for the two Kiki, or also known as children, here. And Holly is also a writer of books, such as the one we just talked about. So, and yeah, Hawaii is closed. That's in case you missed that. Yeah, that's it. So we'll be back. I gotta save some voice for later on. I gotta go eat food and shit and stuff. So anyways, thanks, Taika. Oh, I just want to leave because I know that was really intense. That was more. I have a hard time talking about this stuff without getting more intense than I want to, because I go into this part and then it's hard to control at a certain point. But it needs to be said. Also, I want to leave people with a positive thing though, because at the end of this chapter about burning sweetgrass, the chapter is called the grammar of animacy. The grammar of animacy, and the last bit, because this is a positive thing to leave you on. At the end of this chapter, by the indigenous author of Braiding Sweetgrass, she says, "I'm not advocating that we all learn Potawatomi or Hopi or Seminole, even if we could. Immigrants came to these shores bearing a legacy of languages, all to be cherished. But to become native to this place, Turtle Island, North America, if we are to survive here, our neighbors too, our work is to learn to speak the grammar of animacy so that we might truly be at home. I remember the words of Bill Tall Bull, a Cheyenne elder. As a young person, I spoke to him with a heavy heart, lamenting that I had no native language with which to speak to the plants and the places that I love. Well, they love to hear the old language, he said. It's true. But, he said, with fingers on his lips, you don't have to speak it here. If you speak it here, he said, patting his chest, they will hear you. So that was like, I think I cried when I read that part, because it's like, I was feeling really bad, like having a hard time my own self, but we still, we still try our best to still get what we can. But the main thing is in our now, or in our heart, that we are coming back, and we are doing what we can, under the circumstances. So yeah, I'm gonna start crying right now, so I better get off of there. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, until 6 o'clock, if you stick around, consider checking out. Consider checking out the stream on Twitch later on. Aloha, mahalo, and have a good time, and keep doing your decolonial work, and watch Thor: Love and Thunder.